Okay, that was awesome. Love good things happening here in Spanish Fork and the great people that we have here in our city. So, especially our youth. So, good example to those around you. So, thank you. Okay, we'll move into public comments. Anyone here from the public that would like to come up and address the mayor and the council, you're welcome to come up. Seeing none, we'll go to council comments. Council member Beck.
Thank you. A couple things. We have a new Miss Spanish Fork. We would like to thank Dejana Talbot for her service this past year and welcome Morgan Olson as Miss Spanish Fork. Jill McConnell is first attendant and Kate McAnally is second attendant. So we look forward to their service and their time that they are going to help make our community a better community to live in. Our veterans are sponsoring the Walk for Life event. That's going to be for all fifth graders in Spanish Fork and Salem elementary schools. That will be on May 8th and 9th. Last year was their first time offering this, and it's just a great opportunity for the youth to come down to volunteer down at the sports park and learn about the different military branches of the military. So they're working on that. And then with the Fiesta Days committee I'm on, we have asked Paul Christensen to be our Grand Marshal this year, and he was very humble to accept that. And then for our Pioneer Spirit Award, we asked Kurt Gordon to accept that. So they're both super excited. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Councilman Scopes.
Mayor, a couple of things to report. The animal shelter. We met, they talked about different projects that they're working on there to improve the quality of health and care of the animals that they receive. They also have a roof project that they are in the middle of, working to finish that up as well. They do a great service. They have different things throughout the year that I'll be notifying everyone, or at least helping to notify things about RF chips and things to help identify your pets when they get lost. And they really do a fantastic job down there. Relatively small budget, small agenda, excuse me. The next meeting, we actually had two meetings. One, a special meeting, the Utah Lake Commission. We had a group that came in and talked about, and you can find this open source. There was a group that came in, and you may have heard in Deseret News, where they are looking at wanting to reclaim Utah Lake, help clean it up. They're a private group, and they are looking to, as part of their cleanup, kind of dredge the lake, make it a little deeper, which will help with some of the cleanup. And as part of that dredging, they will create some islands in the middle of Utah Lake, and then the hope then is to build that up and actually put homes and retail space, some bridges out to these islands out in the middle of the lake. Just a proposal, very draft. They certainly have their research, and more information will be coming. I know right now the big thing is they're looking at or talking with the legislature as to how to go about doing this and how it can work. Some groups are in favor, other groups certainly are not. And so more information will be coming out to that. So as you look and see and hear, quite an interesting presentation though. This company is done in Dubai in the Middle East. If you've ever seen pictures of the islands that were created out in the middle of the Persian Gulf that look like palm tree fronds. That's a picture of what it is that they are hoping to do. Not saying it's a good project, bad project. I'm not voting either way on it right now. They're not at that point. Part of the discussion and their presentation was that even with those yellow areas, which are both going to be privately owned land as well as parkland that would be open for the public to use, that even with that land that's been created in the middle of Utah Lake, there would actually be more shoreline and more water available than I want to say the 9 or 13 reservoirs that are in the state of Utah currently. not counting Lake Powell, the part that touches there, but taking Strawberry, Schofield, and things, and putting them in there. Utah Lake is actually really, really big. So that was just part of the proposal. Again, something coming down. That was our special meeting. Really quite interesting to see their proposal. And then our regular meeting we had just last week where they talked about a lot of the same things, just cleaning up Utah Lake. Phragmites, which is a weed that grows down in the area, a lot that they're doing to abate that, and as well as other things that the Utah Lake Commission is working to help improve not only the quality of Utah Lake, but access to the lake and activities that can take place both on and around the lake. And so it was some good meetings. Nothing budget-wise or anything that we have to pay for or worry about right now. Just a lot of information as far as projects that they have, and that's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Councilman Mendenhall.
Thank you, Mayor. We had an airport board meeting since we last met. Happy to be moving along with the plan of the Gail Halverson Candy Bomber Museum, which some of you maybe heard about. If you haven't, look it up, Google it, look it up on Facebook. They have a page, but it would be a really neat addition to our city and to the airport for that to come to fruition. Thankful to the mayor and Chris Child and Chris Thompson for their leadership on pushing that forward. I think it'll be a great asset to the city. The League of Cities and Towns conference is next month that we'll all be to as elected officials, along with other elected officials from around the state. They'll have a great lineup of speakers and classes that we'll report more about that next meeting. Attended a caucus meeting, and just again, thanks to everybody that participates in that process, that gets out and wants to understand the issues and be involved. I think it's a good representation of what we do as Americans and voters. The Active and Healthy Board has a quarterly meeting tomorrow. Susan's here to share some great news with us of some upcoming stuff, but before I invite her up, I sent some pictures to Tyler earlier today that if he could throw them up there real quick. I had the opportunity to go over to the Bridges program in Springville today and talk to those young folks about the importance of being active and healthy. If you're not familiar with the Bridges program, I know Stacy and Brandon are with their past history with the Chamber of Commerce that helped us out in a lot of different aspects. I didn't know that was a video. Did you get my good side there?
No, there is no good side.
The Bridges program has 18 to 22-year-olds that are special needs young adults that are transitioning into the real world. And so this is after high school, and they have the opportunity to be in these classes where the technicians take them to jobs. They perform different jobs in the community. They've helped clean our ambulance station before. Or do they still do that? Except they come over. I don't know if they do that anymore. But there are their jobs at the DI. They do some janitorial work at the schools and different things. But I gave them a bunch of our green wristbands over there today and spent some time with them, letting them know how important it is to be active and healthy. The neat thing is they already know how important it is. The school district gave this program. Each of the students have a Fitbit, and they track their steps. And they have an iPad that they look on every week, once a week, and know how they're doing on their steps. And so I went in the gym, and there they were getting their steps in after they shot some hoop and walked around the gym there. So proud of the program. My mom's been a part of it for 25 years. Councilman Kelapolo's daughter is a technician over there that helps out. And I came away with the impression and the inspiration that these kids, they're not taught excuses in life, right? They are taught how to live and to bridge the gap of where they've been and where they need to go. And it certainly was evident in the way that they had a a priority on being active and healthy. And so it was neat to be with them, and it came away with some inspiration. So we will visit them again in a few weeks, in a month, and see how they're doing with their steps, and talk to them more about the program. So with that active and healthy tidbit, Susan Chapman's here, that is our leader in the active and healthy movement, and she has some news as well. So Susan, if you'd like to come up and take a minute and let us know about that.
Well, just a few months ago, we applied for a grant, and it's a suicide prevention grant. And as you know, the Active and Healthy movement is ran off of a larger grant. And a part of our grant goes towards mental health. And we applied for a grant, and we got it. So that's kind of neat. And it goes strictly towards suicide prevention. And what it's called is a lethal means access reduction grant. People who are in a suicidal crisis have different ways of lethal means. That means women often choose asphyxiation, and medication. Men often choose more direct lethal means, which are guns. And so this grant focuses on strictly that part of this. And this money will go towards our gun club, actually, in providing gun safes at events, and our classes that we already have, and providing snacks at the classes that we already have. Nobody is more passionate about safety than our gun advocates who are passionate about gun safety. And that will go towards gun locks and towards our prescription drug disposal and things like that. So it's kind of a neat program, and we're happy to have it, and it will make our suicide prevention program a little bit more rounded, and add to our neat program that we already have. And I just want to thank you, because our suicide prevention program is really unique. And this is no longer a program, or no longer a problem that can be taken care of by a small group of mental health advocates. This is something that communities need to bind together and to take a leading role in. And that's what we're doing in Spanish Fork. And there's not a lot of communities like us. And as you know, so the national suicide rate is 15 per 1,000 people. In Spanish Fork, it's 25. In rural Utah County South, which we support as Spanish Fork, that's Benjamin, Leland, Lake Shore, it's 35. So 15 compared to 35. And that's a lot of people who are in this area are supported. So we're really doing great things to support our population. So thank you for your continued support of this program. And it's great that we got this money. A lot of people applied for it. So thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Gordon.
Mayor, thank you. First, I want to start off by wishing my son Bennett a happy birthday. He's 16 today. So, yep. So make sure Brandon Anderson, when he gets his license, that we keep an eye out for a green Pontiac 2002. Okay.
Got him insured?
We've had a lot. Yeah, we got him on the insurance policy. All right. We've had a lot happen since our last meeting in February, Mayor, and so we had a meeting with Griffles, and many have seen the nice building that they've been building on Main Street, and we met with them, and their timeline is end of August that they'll start taking life-saving donations for plasma to be able to help with making prescriptions and things that they do. So they're a wonderful addition to the chamber locally, and so we welcome them, and we were excited to have an update from them. The fellows, we were able to have the European fellows, and those 6 individuals came. Are you going to talk a little more about that?
No, go ahead and explain to them what that is.
Well, we had 6 individuals that come over from Europe, and Spanish Fork is a place where they end up spending five days of their, is it 3 weeks, Seth, in America? Yeah. They're 3 weeks, and so 5 days, and they're often referred to a Spanish Fork as one of their favorite places. They get some of them shot a gun for the first time in their life, but others were very skilled at shooting guns, particularly a mayor from Germany. He's a mayor of a town in Germany, and he was very good at shooting a gun, where others had never even held one. Same with riding a horse, and we're able to show them some of the things that we do here culturally. And many of these individuals serve in their capacities in France or Italy and Germany, like I say, and a lot of different countries that are represented. And so we're a host city to this Fellows program, and so it's fun to rub shoulders with these individuals and talk to them about similar or different challenges that we have in our communities, and bounce ideas back and forth. And so that was a good time spent. Parks and Rec Conference in Provo. Fortunately, it was in Provo, so it was nice to get over there and get to a meeting or two. Spanish Fork was recognized in one of the meetings for our children's market that we put on last year over at the library park, where kids were able to sell things that they had made, and so we were able to share that idea with other cities around the state of Utah, and they thought that was really neat. In one of the particular classes, as Spanish Fork's always held very high at the Parks and Rec Conference, and so that was good to attend. A lot of ribbon cuttings, to name a few. Today we had one for Thomas Orthodontics next door to the Utah Valley Pediatrics, which is on the 700 North and 7th East, sort of towards the Vasa Gym area. Statewide Aluminum used to be on that corner. So we welcome them to town, and as members of the chamber, as well as Zoo Wire, Gym, and Presidio Real Estate. We celebrated LEI as our Business of the Month in March, and congratulate them. And so, good things in the chamber. A couple things I want to mention with them is this Saturday at 9 o'clock down at the sports park. And when I say 9 o'clock, we mean 9 o'clock, because at 9, not even 01, like 9 o'clock and 15 seconds, the Easter egg hunt will be over with. So 5,000-ish eggs and bikes to be given out, and a lot of fun prizes and things. So please come and enjoy this wonderful event down at our sports park here on South Main. And the chamber does a lot, and thank the chamber and local businesses for all the time and fun things that they donate. So for those kids that want to have an Easter egg hunt this Saturday at 9 o'clock down there. Had a farmers market meeting today, gearing up for this year. We will have a vendor info meeting coming up to be able to inform those vendors that will be selling their goods at the farmers market this year. It always starts the last Saturday of July and goes through the first Saturday of November. So we're excited about that. We believe we have one of the greatest farmers markets in the state, specifically because we still keep it to local growers and local fruits and vegetables and things, and don't get too far out there with flea market type things. And so that's coming up. We're very excited about that. I attended a SWANA conference for the garbage, and I knew you would make that face, Mayor. So I wanted to bring a visual aid for you, one of which that those peanuts and that peanut butter contain the same amount of peanuts. Okay, so how does that relate to garbage? Well, it's similar in the fact that you've got a lot of empty space in between all the nuts, right? So one of the presentations was talking about what we're doing with recycling. And one thing that blew my mind was that the state of Oregon has discontinued its recycling program completely because China is not buying our recycled materials. They have a variance that they'll accept in a bale of recycled goods of 0.5%, meaning contamination in that bale of cardboard or plastics. In America, we're sending about 20% contamination. So they're shutting us off. They're basically rejecting a lot of our recycled goods that we're sending to China, and so it's just coming back, and it's costing us a lot of money. So in some areas around the country, we're hearing that waste companies like Waste Management in Denver area, they're fining individuals. They'll inspect your recycled can and they'll fine you, or they'll take away your recycled can completely. And so a lot of changes are happening in our recycling program. And the truth is, right now it's currently cheaper to put it in the landfill. But we know that's not the right thing. So we're scrambling for resources and different ways to be able to recycle these goods. And so a lot of very, very good information on what can go in the blue can and what can't. And China's stopping to accept 3 through 7 plastics. So hopefully a lot of our vendors will stop making the 3 through 7 plastics. And as we get more knowledge and hopefully get smarter about this, our recycling, we hope to come to some conclusions. Because if the state of Oregon, which is probably one of the first ones to recycle, has discontinued it completely, then we definitely want to make sure that we just pass on the cost to the taxpayers. It is what it is. So a lot to do there. So if you've got some great ideas, Mayor, other than your burning barrel from when you were a kid, to take the amount of nuts and make it more, peanut butter, let us know. You'll know, I'll have you know that in Africa, the average person generates a half a pound of waste a day. And in America, we generate 7 pounds. So, meaning, while I'm sitting up here, a plastic bottle, and I may have ate at McDonald's a couple times today, and I may have had donuts or whatever. So, it's interesting to hear that we generate a lot of waste here, and so we've got to be smart about what we're doing with it. Mayor, what else? Firearms training. Just wanted to thank Chief Adams. He was able to allow us to go through the firearms training process, which is a virtual reality stage. So it's a stage, and my partner was Councilwoman Beck. And I didn't want to bring it up, but she may have shot a fellow officer in the training. And
This is a virtual world.
it was a virtual fake shooting training, but what our officers go through every day is intense. Just going through that training, which was for what Councilwoman Beck and I went through, was a shooting through a movie theater, and it was incredible when I was finished. Just the amount of just tension that was in my body for hours after. So we just really love and appreciate all that our police officers and first responders do. They responded to a fire on Saturday here in town, and Salem came and helped, and they're just incredible individuals. So thank you for all that you do. I think I've said enough, Mayor.
I think so.
Thank you. I thought that's it.
No, we're glad to have the garbage czar here giving us all that update. Councilman Argal.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick things. So first of all, I'm grateful that our city hosted these the European Fellows. It was an opportunity to meet these. It was very interesting to hear. You saw the picture of them. One of them was a mayor of a city in Germany. 3 of them were on parliamentary in their community where they were from. One was a doctor, one was an engineer. Pretty interesting lives. And just neat to talk to them. They went up to our state and got to see a Senate and a House, and then listen to some of the things that they do in their country, which is totally different, but on the same lines. And very, very grateful. And I think when they left Spanish Fork, of course, they were grateful that they got an opportunity to come and see Spanish Fork and the things that we did with them. They went to the gun club. They got to ride horses. They got a really nice dinner, got to communicate. They stayed with some host families in Spanish Fork and got an opportunity to get to know those families, so it was a neat experience for them. I'd like to extend my thanks to Chris Childs down to the airport. He reached out and gave me an opportunity to go down there and learn about our airport. It is now Spanish Fork Airport. If you've noticed, there's a lot of construction going on down there. There's a lot going on at our airport, and mostly because of that airplane community. Let's go to that. There is a lot of people interested in that, and this new museum that's coming, the Gail Halverson, and in association with the Civil Air Patrol, will build a museum and a training and a museum there, and it'll be so cool to have it in our community and be able to see and help dress up our airport a little bit, and I'm excited to see that. A couple of conferences that I got to attend. We had the Parks and Recs that Brandon mentioned. It's neat to go to these and listen to some of the other communities and what they're doing, and of course them hear some of the things that we're doing. We get an opportunity to sit with Dale and some of his supervisors over that and discuss some things that are going on at our parks. Spanish Fork is blessed with the amount of recreation, the health and activity that they have connections to do and see, and is only continuing as we go continue with our city. Also, I went to a conference, a water conference in St. George, learned a whole bunch about water and the state of Utah, met some new friends there, got some good advice. It was a good conference for me to go to. We forget sometimes that Utah's in a desert, even though it is blossoming like a rose, but everybody's coming here, and when they come here, that requires water. And to see the planning that goes in from our communities, from our state, to make sure that as we grow as far as 2065 into the future, that the water needs of our residents of this state will be met, and that we conserve, and that we meet and tie up water that is Utah's water, so that we make it available for this great state to continue to grow. Without water, we would shortly be just back to another desert. But I'm grateful for those that put those conferences on. Had an opportunity to learn a whole bunch in a short time. It's been a busy month for us, and we still have a couple more conferences coming up in the next little while. Just so you know, we attend those. It takes a lot of time for us, but we learn a lot, and a lot of those take place in March and April, and we get an opportunity to meet and rub shoulders with some other people, other communities. Spanish Fork is always the star of those, in my opinion. We always stand out when they talk about things. As we met with Dale and his group over there, we had several people come by and say, "I can't believe that you're sitting here with your council and your supervisors and talking about Parks and Rec," because they can't do that in their community. So we are blessed to have some very awesome department heads here and some good employees that work for our community. And just grateful I had the opportunity to do that. Thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Okay, great. Appreciate all those. I've just got a couple of items. Let's just give you an update for last month there. The three cities, Spanish Fork, Payson, and Salem, have been fighting a bill that was run up at the legislature. There was a bad bill for all three cities, and we spent a lot of time up on the Hill, probably a lot more time than I ever wanted to be up on the Hill, but we were able to get that bill defeated. And I just want to thank all those individuals who were involved in that, especially Seth, took a big role in that. And we met a lot of our legislators and senators up there and sat in a lot of meetings and twisted a lot of arms and whatever else you have to do up there. Use the contacts you got. But I just want you to know that we're fighting for what's best for our citizens and the city here. And so there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that you don't understand or don't see. But everybody's out there for your best interest, and this was a good thing for us to get killed. Also, I had the opportunity to go back to Washington, D.C. A few weeks ago to our American Public Power Conference. As one of our Spanish Fork, we belong to that association, and so it's really good to go back and make sure we protect the needs of our power, that we try to keep our costs as low as we can, And that's the one nice thing about Spanish Fork. We have kept our power rates low, and we continue to work to do that. It's a little difficult sometimes with the regulations that they keep putting on us, but we've always strived to make sure we can keep our power low and give back to our citizens the best service that we know how. Also, this last week we had the rodeo reading program where we went into a bunch of the elementary schools. And I think I'd like to have Dell come up and maybe talk a little bit about this shortly, Reader's Digest version. Dell's a big part of this, the assemblies that we went to, and explain to them what that is.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, the reading program started, we're in our 4th year. And what we do is we've tied this in with rodeo, but we go and have the kids read as much as they can and report that to their teachers each day, and then as a result of that, they win. They have a chance to win rodeo tickets. We also have grand prize winners. We have 2 winners from every school who will not only receive rodeo tickets, but they receive a pair of Justin boots, a pair of Wranglers, and a Resist-All hat. And those have all come from national sponsors who have taken an interest in our program. They also have the opportunity to be able to be on the arena floor during the grand opening of the rodeo. And so neat opportunity. The kids, we read over 2.3 million minutes last year. And obviously our goal is to encourage kids to read and entice them with some rodeo fun stuff to go along with that. The teachers and the principals have all been very enthusiastic, and so we go to the schools to get them excited about reading and put on some rodeo demonstration things to kind of get them excited about that as well. The interesting part is the first year we started doing this and we asked how many kids have been to a rodeo, there were, a few hands went up. Now almost every school you have to ask the opposite. How many of you have not seen a rodeo? Because they love that. It's one of our marquee events here with along with Fiesta Days, and so just a neat program. The Nebo School District has been great. We actually did 10 elementary schools this year, and so it's a good partnership that we've been able to develop with them and help encourage kids to read. Sorry, that was a little longer than the Reader's Digest.
Yes, it was, but thanks anyway. It's a great program, and they even got me to rope once. And, I got it, didn't I? I caught it, so thank you. Yeah, anyway. All right, let's move on. Consent items.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing, ordinance Z02-18, changing the zone designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the Reese Apartment zone change.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The subject property involved in this proposal is located on the corner of 400 North and 200 East. Up until recently, a structure was on the property that for a long time served as an elementary school. You've seen this project kind of before in a couple of different ways. Most recently, when we talked about creating a new zoning district, the R5 zone, we discussed this project as it kind of served as a model for the development of that zone. And the proposal tonight is to change the existing zoning, which is a combination of R1, 6, and R3, to R5. Here we say R4. It's actually R5 that's proposed. The Development Review Committee here a few weeks ago reviewed a site plan for the subject property that involves the development of a total of 36 different apartment units in one building. These are a couple of the elevations. of the proposed structure. This is the site plan that was reviewed right there. So you can see as proposed, the building will front onto both 400 North and 200 East. It's a 2-story building. All of the parking is interior to the site. The parking is a combination of spaces that are within garage buildings, 2 of those there. Parking that's underneath carports, you can see there, and just surface parking. And with the number of parking spaces that are provided with this layout, the project does meet our parking requirements as defined in the R5 zone. Really, just from my perspective, a lot of heavy lifting went into the development of the R5 zone. Different things are addressed, like architecture in terms of how a roof line needs to look, how a facade needs to look in terms of how much relief there is on any particular plane of a building, how much park space there needs to be or open space in a project, and different things like that. So, that being said, I'm happy to talk in as much detail as you'd like about the proposed project, but I'm going to maybe, short of you guys asking questions, just be, frankly, a little bit succinct. There is one issue that did come up in the Planning Commission meeting that caught me a little bit by surprise. And I think we're fortunate to have a planning commissioner that is an architect by profession, and he had recognized something that I didn't pick up on the plans relative to balconies. So one of the provisions that we have in the R5 zone is a requirement for balconies. And there is an element designed into the buildings that when I looked at the plans, both from this perspective and the plan view, it looked to me like it was what I would consider to be a functioning balcony. And the applicant mentioned, or somebody representing the applicant mentioned in the Planning Commission meeting, that that proposed feature is a 2-foot deep steel grate. That is, the steel grate would be the floor with a railing of some kind, like you can see there on the outside of that grate feature. And as much as I sort of hate the idea that we have to define every little thing that we call out in our ordinance, I'm afraid this is probably one place where we need to do that. We need to define what a balcony is. Provo City, for example, they've done that. For balconies, they require those to be a total of 50 square feet with a certain depth. And in all candor, I think probably in the next month or two, you'll see a proposed change to Title 15 to make that clarification. But it's our recommendation as staff tonight that the proposed zone change be approved, which the Development Review Committee and Planning Commission also have both done, so that the zoning would be changed to R5, simply subject to the applicant modifying the plans to include at least a 50-foot balcony for each of the different units that are on the second floor of the building.
Feet.
Thank you, 50 square foot balcony. Any questions for me? This is a public hearing.
Yeah, we'll probably go into public hearing, and then we can probably call you back up if we have some other
Okay,
questions, so.
Thanks.
All right, so this is a public hearing, so I would entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
Motion to go into public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in public hearing. Anyone that would like to come up and address this project, please come up, state your name, hold your comments to about 3 minutes. If we could, I'd appreciate it.
Do you want to put this somewhere to begin planning? So this was our color board.
Hold it while you get something.
Will you grab it for me?
Oh, look at that.
Julie Smith.
Look at that, he's just like primary.
So these are the colors that the architect just came up with. Ken Harris is the architect. Between him and Karen, they put a lot of time and effort into this, a lot of detail on it, as you can see it up close. As you know, the Reese School came down between yesterday and today, and Karen has brought you guys some memorabilia for it. If you want to
Awesome.
hand that out, Karen, right now.
Well, sure. Yeah, we're not above that.
We're really proud of this project. As I said, Karen became emotionally involved in this, which is good. It means a lot to her to have a good project here. I think the architect
These gold
and the
bars?
builder, close. This is really,
Okay, just
in all
checking.
seriousness, you would not believe the number of people that line the streets watching the school come down and wanting to get in there and to get something from the school. So Karen gathered these up for you to have a little piece of the
Thank
school
you.
left.
I have
Thank you.
I have a brick from the central school, that my dad tore down.
Brandon, you can do it.
No, he ate at McDonald's twice today.
I hate it.
He needs to learn his lesson.
And as Karen and, I'm not sure if Ken Harris is here tonight, he was supposed to
Like a
be.
clean one owner?
On the balconies, they looked at that really closely, and as Ken described in the planning commission, he thought as an architect, he wanted to bring the outside in, not bring the inside out. And also our builder, Craig Pay, is here. And it was their feeling that, especially along the two sides of the street, they didn't want a lot of stuff stored on the balconies that people do. You know, they put out their bikes, they put out what stuff. And they wanted to keep the look of the building, and so that's why they decided to go with the smaller balconies. I'll let Karen speak for a minute, but if you have any questions, Karen and I and the builder are here.
My name's Karen Christensen, and it's been a great opportunity to work with this project. I went to the Reese School, and all of my siblings went there, and so it's been the demolition has definitely been a bittersweet experience for everyone involved. So I don't know if you have any questions, any.
No,
We're excited about it
as
going
I drove by there yesterday and today, you see something that's been there forever, then all of a sudden, it's not. So we're looking forward to seeing what you can replace it with.
Thank you for taking it over. That's a big job. It's going to look great.
It's, I mentioned in the Planning Commission, we've tried to pull in as much of the original brick from the original school and have pulled the tiles, pulled the original Reese School sign. That sign
Watch
is,
that happen,
yeah. Yeah, so the inside commons area, you can see, that's the first level on the drawing. There's a common area, and so two walls inside of that common area will the original brick and the Reese School sign have a historic,
So right, that wall right there. Right?
actually just inside, right there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Whoops.
Cool.
Ray Meekum stopped by the project this morning, and he told me that he had a great picture with some of the school administrators and outside, which I hadn't been able to find yet, so that'll be there. And even pulled the coal chute cover from down on the boiler unit, so there was a time it was fed with coal. So.
Yes, it was. Great.
So-
Well, thank you. We appreciate you doing this.
Thank you for the brick.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Anyone else that would like to come up and talk about this project? Come up and state your name, rank, and serial number.
Craig Pay, I'm the developer for Mrs. Christensen. In listening to Dave, it seems like maybe that's the only concern we have, so we'll address that on the patios, the decks. The purpose of this is really, in our experience in building these the last few years, is that there's a few things. The insurance companies certainly don't like us having people out on those decks. Simply, one of the main reasons, because they like to use barbecues. Fire issue with the insurance companies. So that's one reason. The other reason is we have had a continued issue and problem with people turning them into storage units. If you will, a perfect example would be the new project next to University Mall. They have bigger decks on there, and if you'll go by there, they're cluttered. They're covered with bikes. Everything that can be stored in a storage unit will be stored out on the decks. And so the purpose of us having the smaller decks is to try to prohibit people. In fact, the rules of the department will be that you're really not allowed to store things on the outside of the patios. But yet it gives them the plan has a setup with it where in your family room you have great big 8-foot glass doors, and you're allowed to you can go out there and you can enjoy the fresh air. You can step outside of your unit if that's what you wish to do. And if you leave those doors open, it really does bring the outside into the apartment in a lot of ways. And with Mr. Harris, and I certainly respect his architectural integrity, he thought this was a really good idea to try to begin with. I know that him and one of our commissioners bantered this issue a little bit over the size of the said patio, of what they would expect of it and not, but the purpose of it are those reasons. And we do feel strongly about it. We'll certainly do whatever the city would like done. We want this project to be exemplary of what is to come here in this city, because we all know that things are pushing south here, and you have a great demand for this type of a product. So, okay, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Greg.
I really appreciate all the help we've had from Dave. Been a wonderful gentleman to work with, as well as the entire city. So, thank you.
We like hearing those reports. Anyone else would like to come up and address this issue? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. Oh, are you coming?
Maybe.
Oh, well, maybe. Hey, you snooze, you lose.
I think as...
Oh, you need to state your name.
Oh, my name is Angela Escamilla, and I live on First East, in between 400 and 500 North. I think some of our residents that are in that area are a little bit concerned about 400 North, because that's a main road that goes 35 miles an hour. And we've had, usually people don't park on that side of the road anyways, because it's the Old Reese School. Occasionally there'll be a car that's parked there, and it creates vision problems with other cars coming quickly down the road. So I guess our concern would be that that area is becoming more of a high traffic area, with a lot of people using First East as a main form of transportation versus Main Street at times, or people trying to get onto Main Street right there from First East onto 400 North to go towards Main Street. And so our concern is, as there needs to be parking, people might park on that road, and it would, block some visual of the cars coming that way, and either children could be hit, because children do cross that area, or there could be future accidents that right there. And so that's our concern, is parking, of what's allowed, if there needs to be some regulations or something to be addressed about where people can park on that side of the road.
Great. I think that's a valid concern, and we'll probably have our safety people look at that and take that in consideration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for having the courage to come up, even if you hesitated. All right, anyone else? I'll wait a little longer this time. If not, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
I'll make a motion to go out of public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Beck and a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any questions, comments?
Is Fourth North still a state road?
Yes.
And they maintain that?
Yep, so we can make some recommendations, but they're the one that's in charge of that road, so.
Dave? What's the difference in the two balconies that they're saying? You're saying 50 square feet, and what is it that they're proposing?
As far as square footage is concerned, I would guess that 18 square feet maybe. 2 by 8, so 16 square feet versus 50. So 18 maybe versus 50.
Is that something you're going to continue to hash out or is that something you want us to chime in tonight on?
I think this is the night to definitely address it, yeah. And then, like I said, I think other communities, frankly, they found a need to define that in their ordinance, and that's something that we need to do, so.
Something that we need to do?
Yeah, so we'd be back before you here, I think likely before we'd see another project proposed in the R5 zone.
So what was the
that change.
consensus of the Planning Commission?
Yeah, we really didn't discuss it a lot with them. Like I said, it kind of caught me off guard. The chairman of the Planning Commission had some significant reservations with.
Yeah, you sent us an email after the planning deal, so I'd be concerned.
So the planning commission,
I'd be interesting to see what all they had to say,
they recommended that it be approved.
as is.
No, with
Yes,
the,
you could say that. I mean, it wasn't discussed. I think you might have minutes
yeah, we
from
have
that
the minutes.
meeting
We do.
in the staff report.
So they added the 50 square feet in, or they did not?
They didn't, we didn't ask them to.
So they, okay.
So R5 still doesn't define it, but it's something you're saying we need to do in the
Yeah,
future.
the language in the R5 zone simply says that a balcony is required. It doesn't define it. And again, yeah, this being somewhat subjective, I guess. And actually, there's something called a Juliet that I've learned is actually an architectural feature, which is a pseudo balcony, and you do see those with some frequency on bigger apartment buildings and things like that. In my view, what we're looking at here is just that. It's a Juliet, not a balcony. And that's a real thing. I'm not making that up. Surprised me the first time I heard it. So again, and I honestly, I don't know that 50 feet is a magic number by any means, but that's something that other communities that frankly do have a lot more experience than we do in projects like this have landed on. So that's probably where I'd start.
After Commissioner Fallon sent out an email, it's kind of like when you buy a car, you start noticing all the other types of cars on the road, right? So I found myself looking at balconies in different communities, and especially Springville. They've got development there on Main Street that's about just south of 400 South in Maine. That's has a little larger balcony. And then Provo, by the new Provo City Center Temple, I was kind of looking at their balconies, and then I helped my brother-in-law move on Saturday. Wasn't my favorite day, helping my brother-in-law move, but we wheeled the barbecuer through the family room and onto the patio, onto his second floor balcony. It's funny because as an insurance agent, I didn't think about the fire hazard myself, but he was like, "This is my space. This is where I'm going to come out, barbecue, and get fresh air and things." And I appreciated that Craig touched on the light. We have some apartments near my home, near the new Reese Elementary School, up on the East Bench, and they don't have any ability to even step out. So even a Juliet, if you will, would be wonderful for them. Because I often go into those apartments to see some neighbors, and it's depressing, the lack of light. I'll just, sometimes that is let in. So I do appreciate, like you mentioned, Craig, that the architect was thinking about that coming into these homes. I thought that was a really, really neat addition. And so from what I heard was that you're willing to look at that and work with staff to come to a good conclusion, or are you feeling like it's just you want it to be? Yes, please do. Yes, sorry, I'm asking you a question.
With the balconies, I mean, it's an architectural swear word a little bit, Juliet. Ken Harris, who of course we've discussed, but he felt like this met the criteria of a balcony. Enabling them to be able to walk outside. I know that a big part of the project, particularly with Dave, was that we gave it a very neighborhood front look on the street side. So if you'll notice, every single apartment has access to the street directly on the street. They have their own patio on the bottom floors, which are bigger patios. They're 10 by 10 patios on the bottom floors. And so, to address the traffic thing, I know that's UDOT's decision to make, but we're kind of enticing people to park on the street by doing what we're doing, by each unit having its own patio in the front and a sidewalk up directly to the street. I know that, Commissioner, that if you lived in one of those units, you'd probably want to park in the front. You'd probably park right in front of your door. And I think people are going to do that a little bit. The amount of parking that we do have here is more than adequate, as much as any city that I've ever built in. I believe it's 2.25 per unit, and a lot of these units are one bedrooms. So there's only one 3-bedroom unit. All the rest are either 2s or 1s. So the parking, I think, is more than adequate. But I think we're inviting people to park on the streets by doing that. That's my take on it as a developer. As far as the patios again are concerned, is with the street side, we didn't really want them to be able to store the things out there. I want them to be able to go out and again, we talk about Provo a lot, and I develop a lot in Provo. Provo's probably the largest patio required of any city that I've ever worked in. Of the 37 cities I've worked in this state. So Provo's a little bit different. Orem, we've built hundreds of units with these particular patios on them. They've worked very well for people. They don't store their things outside. The buildings look neat and clean. We're really trying to stay away from the patio thing, to be honest with you, on the top floors. Those reasonings being that it's a street side, we don't want a lot of activity going on later in the evenings. I mean, I know your brother probably is a good, quiet kid, but you might get some people that, are disturbing the neighbors across the street because they're sitting up there, 15 feet in there and having their shindig, whatever it may be, wiener roast, whatever it may be. We're supplying them barbecue. We're going to supply them a barbecue area, a pavilion, playgrounds, everything to meet their needs as far as entertainment and things that they would want to do, enjoying with their families in the big pavilion outside. And that's where we're going to try to encourage them to go for this kind of issues. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, please come up.
I've liked the design of the more shallow balcony myself. I personally do notice balconies a lot, and I do notice this stuff that is out there. It does have an element. I can't quite visualize the size that is being recommended, but it does change that face. In fact, I've looked at different designs of balconies, and I could maybe see that if these units were set back in, right, with the design of this, the balcony is sitting right over the front door of its downstairs neighbor. So structurally, I think it changes the face and the look that we've got right now to go with something larger. Ken mentioned in the Planning Commission meeting, 4th North, it's a wider street. 2nd North, you are right there with smaller homes across the street. So there's kind of just that feel of what's coming into the neighborhood and not really wanting to overpower any of its neighbors. So those are my thoughts.
Can I just ask a question? You wouldn't say there's a balcony, but you can't store anything there, right? That would be a nightmare as a landlord.
I'm going to go off of some contracts we haven't come up with, but there will be some language that will curb that appeal.
Yeah.
Oh, come up here. So
Everyone in
those
television land.
those 4 million people can see you.
In our leases, and most management leases with this type of a product, there's going to be language in it that says you cannot store things out there. It's going to say you cannot barbecue. With me and our management, because we're not only developers, but we're also apartment managers, and we maintain our own things. In our leases, it's very descriptive that you're not allowed to barbecue on that. Part of the problem, especially with the insurance, is if you have another big deck over the top of that deck, people using big barbecues, it's a safety issue for us. It is. As a landlord, it scares me a lot. And so we have enacted to where there are no barbecues. Now they're going to say to us, well, where do you want us to barbecue? Well, we're going to try to put a nice facility for you in the commons area to where you can go down and use that said facility, whether we provide propane for them and for the barbecue that we set up out there. So absolutely there would be language in there. We don't, if you don't, you're going to get a lot of people drying their clothes. Okay, that's the problem we really have with apartments. People wanting to take their towels out, their clothing, and they hang it on the railings, and pretty soon it's very degrading to the apartment in the neighborhood. And so the neat, clean look, to me, is a very important thing, as well as maintenance. We all know everybody here has been in a Marriott hotel that is having troubles with the patio deck outside as far as water is concerned. So, it can be done, but it does become a large maintenance issue. It's something that most of those decks and patios are going to have to be redone in one way or another in a 10 or 12 year period. Resurfaced, recoated, whatever product we decide to use on the balconies. Answer to your question?
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you.
One last.
Yes.
Come on up.
One other point that we did share with the Planning Commission was that we are exceeding the green space, so there is that. There's a lot of space out on the grassy area in the pavilion for that feel of the green, and so I know there is that idea of. I'm not sure what that idea of the balcony bringing community to the project, but I feel like the project itself has a lot of community feel to it. So.
I agree with Karen a little bit that the community feel of your design, I really do like it. And I think the part of what I'm dealing with, I think some of the other councils got to deal with, and certainly our city as a whole has got to deal with. This is our first foray into 18 units per acre. So yes, Provo City's got decades of experience of what's good, what's bad, what they wish they could change, and here we are in Spanish Fork. Granted, great project at the right place and I think the right time, but that is the only issue really that through the whole process of these renderings I've seen. I just assumed those were balconies that people were going to be on, and so it was, when I read the minutes, the surprise to me that nobody could stand on there. And 2 feet, 18 inches or whatever, it's just going to be really hard to stand on that. I think there's a component of, I don't know that and this is going to be part of your management style, which there's a part of that overselling the problems that are going to come with this that make me nervous, right? I mean, whoever manages this, whether it's on-site or off-site management, I would hope the first person that stores garbage out there, whether it's 18 inches or 3 feet or 4 feet or 5 feet, gets a phone call that day and says, you got 5 hours to get that garbage down to where it's supposed to go, or else you're fined in your contract. So that's my fear. I hope it's going to be regulated. You haven't come up with that yet, but I hope that's what's going to be regulated, because that's been a fear of your neighbors. And whether it's 18 inches or 50 square feet, that's enough to put a garbage bag out there. My personal opinion, I don't mind the places in Park City and even the downtown Springville one, when I drove by it today, had a couple bikes out on it. They weren't junk bikes that looked like they were rusted, but they looked like people actually rode those things. And here, I hope that's the case. I hope a one-bedroom apartment renter from you is a person that hops on his bike, gets on our 7-mile trail, and loves the whole day and rides it back home, because that does lend credence to you're more than covered on the parking. So the bikes aren't as concerned to me. I guess the aspect that outweighs it more than maybe the arguments you've made, Craig and Karen, about the smaller balcony is, I like the idea of people being out there. I think the more visible things are, and maybe not on the street as much. I mean, you're right, people are going to park on 2nd East, and I think that's kind of a cool thing. I think people will quickly learn 4th North. It's probably not the best place to park your car and walk up to your unit, because there's already some people that have to do that on their houses, or choose to do that on their houses in 4th North, and I think they're taking their life in their own hand when they time it to hurry and get in, because people can come at a pretty good clip on that road. But 2nd East, I think that's a neat thing as far as parking. Mayor's been to conferences in D.C., and I just got back from one too, and man, that's what it is all over there, those row homes and people parking on the street in front of their apartments just like this. But I like people out on the balcony being able to see what's going on the street, what's going on with the car. I especially like it, people inviting people on the backside balconies that see what's going on in your common areas, every time it is that night. And I get you're gonna have a whole bunch of different issues that your management company is gonna have to make sure of. Hey, quiet down up there, you're being rowdy or whatever. But the more eyeballs on that area that's shielded from the public street, I kind of like that idea. I think that the people out there maybe outweigh the risk of garbage or the risk of whatever else would come from that balcony. So for me, that would be really, out of all of this and all the colors and the renderings you've went through, that would be the only change that I would be holding on to, that I would be proposing before making a zone change, is that balcony gets to a level where where we're going to have more of these developments in Spanish Fork. And I think from our eye, that's and granted, it's the untrained eye, it's the new eye at it. I'll readily admit that, but it just seems more appealing, the ones I've seen in Orem or Springville or Provo, that have larger balconies rather than the small balconies. And I know that might be a change for some plans and some costs and everything, but I hope you're far enough at the beginning stages of it that maybe that wouldn't injure you too much. I think it would make them that much more attractive for your tenants, to be honest with you. It's not a condominium project where they can say, hey, I own this, you're not telling me what to do with my balcony. These are renters. You can tell them what to do with their balcony, or else their rent's going up, or else they're kicked out, right? You should have some decent authority over that, I hope. And so I hope that's what would come if somebody abuses that balcony. That's my personal feelings.
Thank you.
Just one question on parking there on 4th East. It would still have to have the same setbacks from the corners when someone parks, just as any other street. Is that correct? I mean, for people to be able to turn left or turn right, we've all come to intersections where you're doing the inch thing to try to look because someone has parked too close to the corner and you can't quite see past their car. There would be red curb or something requiring, just as anywhere else, requiring a particular setback to be able to get in and out safely. Am I correct in that assumption, or?
Typically, UDOT doesn't red curb from the corners. If there's a stop sign, which there are not in that area on 4th North, then there wouldn't be any restrictions on where people park. So
if you're on 2nd East and you're coming out, someone in theory then could actually park with the back of their car right next to that stop sign, and then out the width of the car.
Correct. That's how it is all throughout the block.
But just because it's not red curb doesn't mean it's legal. So I mean, state law still dictates that you can't do that.
Right.
It's just
right.
It's
You
not
can't straddle the gutter.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm asking, is there would still be.
You can't where there's a stop sign, but I think the concern here is on 4th North.
That's why they talk
where
about.
there's no stop sign, and
Yeah,
so.
no. It would be people parking on 4th North, but if someone's on 2nd East, they still would have, turning onto 4th, they still would be able to have at least some visibility because you're not allowed to park all the way up.
Rep that one.
Is that, am I explaining it right?
I think so, and this, just maybe to take it.
I mean, because I understand the idea of wanting to park in front of your
Right.
your unit, which makes sense. I guess to explain my question or statement a little more, there is no front door to a unit that's close enough that would put a vehicle within that visible.
We talk about a sight
space.
triangle
Yes, that's what I'm
at intersections and even where driveways intersect
right.
with roads like that. That's a concern, and Chris, I know a lot of times has insight that I don't have, but I had a discussion a couple of years ago with some folks from UDOT that, for example, they had talked about adding a bike lane on 4th North. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet, but one of the casualties, for example, of putting a bike lane along 4th North is that on-street parking would go away throughout that corridor. Just in touching base with Junior, both he and I think that if we approached UDOT about red curbing that, some part of 400 North for whatever reason, UDOT probably would be very accommodating. And while I genuinely appreciate the opportunity that you have, like Councilman Mendenhall mentioned, with almost like a walk-up kind of a unit here, people certainly would find that very attractive parking space. But at the same time, I don't think that works on every street. I think on 2nd East, long-term, that will work very well on 2nd East. But on 4th North, I think it's just a matter of time because of factors that are way out of our control, mostly traffic volume related, that on-street parking there goes away. And that's why we require them to have as much off-street parking as we require. So, that benefit that some people might enjoy initially probably is not going to happen or continue long-term on 400 North, is just kind of my guess. And we need to work with UDOT to implement whatever comes along.
Now the zoning, and we've talked about the balcony seems to be the biggest issue. I like a Juliet balcony. I've seen them in Europe. I've seen it's called a Maltese balcony in Spain. I was there for the Army for a month last year, which is like a Juliet balcony, a little bigger, and then it's actually encased. It's got walls, windows, and so it's like a sunroom balcony. And then we have the open balcony we're talking about. I only mention that I like a Juliet balcony. I like a Maltese balcony. I like a regular balcony. My concern isn't necessarily what I like, is the fact that and I know the applicant's agreeable to whatever as a city is decided. My concern is that if they came with an understanding that a balcony is a rather open-ended definition, then they meet the definition of a balcony the way it stands. And so my concern is, by definition, what they're proposing is a balcony. Now, Provo has their 50 square feet. I don't know that Provo's standards necessarily reflect Spanish Fork standards. And I don't know. I would almost suggest, I've got to think about it for a couple more minutes before I propose anything. Okay, maybe a minute then. But, I would almost suggest that, since this applicant came with our current definition of balcony, that they be allowed to build with that definition of a balcony, which then gives us time to be able to not hold up their development, but then step back and look at, all right, how do we want to define it? It gives us more time to be able to look at it. Maybe Provo standards are appropriate, and maybe they're not for our city and our future developments. And so it gives us that chance to look at it.
I agree with Keir. I like the way this has designed. I mean, they came and they've met, I don't know how many times they've met with the everybody with the city officials. They've designed this. I think in this particular case, they came in good faith. I like the little balcony, open it up like they've got it now. I think down the road, this might be an issue that we might want to address and watch, but I don't think we should hold these guys hostage over an oversight like this. I think, my recommendation is we move on and approve it like, the planning board approved it, and then afterwards we got a letter later, but the planning board seemed to be fine with it. I'm good with it. I'm in the industry, I build, and so I kind of like the idea where I can open up and my whole living room's a balcony and open it up like that. So for this particular instant, I think my personal feeling is I think we should approve it, and then we should do a little more research to say, yeah, we got to make a decision tonight, something that's going to affect the rest of the city's ordinance. I don't think it's fair to us to do that. I think this is something that needs to be studied out with the planning board and with the council and have recommendations come back, not just pick one city. Well, this is what they do, so we ought to do it. I think we need to get a bigger scope on that, personally.
What's the, Craig, one thing you did say is the balcony being larger would feel like it's closer to the sidewalk and everything. What is that? What's that distance?
Where's our sit back?
Yeah, when does this house begin and the sidewalk end? Well, how much grass is there? Is it,
I think it's a 10-foot setback on those. They wanted the buildings as close as they could to the roads, so that it would encroach pretty close.
so that's 10 feet, and you went 5 feet out. That'd be halfway.
Yeah, because 5
Out
times
towards
8
the-
would be a 40-foot. And he's suggesting 50, so it'd be even further out.
How big is the window that?
They're 8 feet wide.
Those are 8 feet.
Yeah, 4 people can stand on the decks. 4 people can stand outside and look at the mountains. I mean, that's the size of the chute.
On your proposal?
Yes, on the proposal.
Will you come to the microphone? Our camera guys are.
These we use the word Juliet. That's the word we want to use tonight. So we use the word Juliet. We'll allow 4 people to stand outside on this Juliet. There's enough room for 4 people to stand and
They'd have to
enjoy
really
the
like
mountain.
each other.
Well, you know, if you're going to be on a patio, you're going to like it. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. We just kind of felt like it's a little bit overbearing to have those patios that close to the sidewalks, which was an issue that you had. And then, I mean, as a developer and somebody that goes to a lot of public meetings in my career, the mayor said something I don't think I've ever heard a politician say before, and I absolutely agree with him 100% that Karen has done everything she can do to meet what was proposed and asked of her. And I honestly can say that in all my career, I've never seen an owner take more interest in a project than Karen Christensen has done. And she wants to be proud of this. To her, this is a very emotional project. She wants it to be enjoyed by the neighborhood. She wants to be proud of this. That is something she wants to be. And I feel that Karen and as well as Ken, I mean, this basically boils down to 2 people. We had a commissioner that was an architect, and he had his idea of what a balcony was. Ken Harris, who is probably one of the best architects in the entire state of Utah, had a different opinion on this balcony. Whose opinion's right? Whose isn't? I agree with the mayor that does Provo City have the magic number for patios? No, I do not. I absolutely do not think Provo has that. Orem allows these. Linden, Pleasant Grove. This type of a Juliet is allowed in all of them. There's very few cities, Provo being one of them, that addresses the size of a balcony. They're one of the very few cities in the entire Wasatch Front
What's
that
their
addresses.
reason? What's their advantage? Why do they say we need a
honestly, a
50-foot
lot.
balcony?
The things that
Just
I
to
do are a lot
cost
around
you money?
BYU. The other thing that it kind of can do is it can increase the cost of the building, which I understand is not a concern of the cities. That is not concerned what the project costs. But it does increase the cost to build a bigger patio. The rents are higher. It decreases the amount of people that can afford the apartments. This is what I would consider affordable housing. This is it right here. This is the product. These things aren't going to rent for so much money that you have to have a day and night job to be able to afford. The majority of the people renting these type of apartments are young couples. That is the majority. I can tell you that from experience of hundreds and hundreds of apartments here in Utah County. And I would say, and I quoted this to the commission, I would say 80 to 90% of the people living in these apartments are young couples. Most of them no children yet, to be honest with you. So, but there's a tremendous need for this in this part of the county as well as everywhere else, as we all know with the growth and that's continuing here. And I think this is going to be one of the best products this city's had as far as apartments are concerned. It's the best project I've ever worked on as far as the quality of the visionary of the project, as well as the quality of the amount of parking, the amenities that she'll have with them, the bikes. You brought that up, Councilman. That what we do in ours is we'll put in very secure bike racks in these where they're bolted down on the concrete, so that, and usually we'll probably in this type of a unit we'll probably put a 30-unit bike rack in it. That's in an area to where people feel comfortable storing and locking their bikes in there, and that's where we try to refer them to with their bicycles rather than decks or in front of their doors or wherever that may be, to try to keep them consolidated to a bicycle area, so that they can use them and will use them, so that they're convenient rather than have to carry your bike clear downstairs. There it is at the front door on the bike rack, secure.
Yeah, and I don't want my comments to be misconstrued at all at the need, and I'm not saying you're trying to do that.
No.
I would just echo exactly what you say. The
I think
need.
the patio thing, just, it kind of came down to me as watching it the other night, was it was just kind of two architects bantering about whose opinion was right.
And that wasn't what precipitated it for me as much as when I look at a drawing and I don't get a side view of how big that is and what that looks to, how far that goes out to the sidewalk, is I look at that and say, oh, that's somebody's going to have a balcony and stand up on there and have a good time.
It's additionally, I mean, it's an architectural feature that is there to make it look nice. You know, if you look at it straight on, you're right. You wouldn't know whether that was 5 feet deep or was it was 2 feet deep. You would not know that. But the deckings themselves, they're all powder-coated ornamental iron, so they're very attractive, very pretty. It's something that you would see in Europe or anywhere, in New York City and California, anywhere. This is because that space is an area that, you know, the neighbors don't want to look upstairs and see a ceiling either. That's another issue with these. They have a metal grating. They only stick out 2 feet, so they're not, you know, intruding on the neighbors downstairs or upstairs.
And when you
whether
say
this be a 2-story or 4-story.
The neighbors on the bottom, when you say they have a porch,
Yes,
mean
they do. They actually have a
recessed
concrete porch
or just a concrete slab.
Just a
welcome up
concrete
to their
slab with
door?
I believe it has calls for railing around it as well, ornamental railing, and then there'll be steps going out and then a sidewalk out to the street. You know, it gives the bottom floor definitely has more area to enjoy outside in front of their houses than the upstairs, but the upstairs doesn't have access to the streets like the bottom floors do. So in my opinion, it was strictly a matter of taste. It was a matter of, you know, one architect preferring one thing, another architect preferring another. And I didn't want to see Karen get embroiled in that battle, and that's kind of why I'm very happy that some of the people here on the council have kind of don't want to hold her ransom at this point. I think that if that's something the city does want to look at in the future as to a requirement in the zone, absolutely. With you having this being the very first R5 zone you've had in the city, you're going to have some things that you're going to want to address. However, I think that Spanish Fork and Dave has done a very wonderful job of what they've designed and what you require in this particular new zone that you're going to be doing. I think that you've nailed it. I think you've nailed it. If you want to fix the patios, that's something that the city would probably want to look at in the future if that's something that is important to them. But right now, I felt like she'd met the criteria. The plans are heading to engineers. So the plans are done to this. After our meeting with the commissioners, we felt comfortable enough. Now, we already had to go to a step. We didn't take very many more steps after that council meeting, but you have to get to a point to where you can proceed, and whether it's elevations, floor plans, site plan, I mean, there's a lot of money, a lot of effort put into that to get to that point. And then, I felt a little bit like this was an opinion. This was just an opinion item, and if the Spanish Fork City insists that that's something that they want from Karen, I know that Karen would do that. I'd prefer we didn't. I'd prefer to continue on with what we currently have and see how it works for you. If you know it's something that you get complaints about and you feel is unattractive, then I think that the city would want to propose a different rule on the patio in the zone.
Thank you.
Just on the record, for the applicant here, I looked up my notes of when I last talked to you about this, when I first talked to you about this. It was more than a year ago. I think you have been just I can't scream it enough, the blessing of an applicant of a project like this, to take the time that you have, the undertaking it is, and the risk it is to do the project. And so that's number one. I don't think we could ask for a better applicant. Number two is the need for this type of housing in our city and in Utah County, in the state of Utah. It's a larger discussion we're having at the state level, and the mayor can attest. He was in meetings about that up at the legislature as well. So this is something that is definitely needed, and I think we're going to see more of projects similar in Spanish Fork.
Again, that's, I want to make sure that's known.
All right. Any other comments, questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance Z02-18, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the Reese apartment zone change. Do I need to say R5, Dave? Please. R5 zone.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Argal, a second by Councilmember Beck. This will be a roll call vote. Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilman Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
That passes. Your dad would be thrilled. Did a lot of work with him, so
Thanks for the break.
that was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Oh, we got to go on to another one? Gosh. That counted for all of them, I thought. Ordinance Z03-18, changing the zone designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork for the Otterson zone change.
This request, I think, is a little bit unique, and I think staff's recommendation is a little bit unique as well. Typically, we're not going to recommend that we change property that's currently zoned industrial to some zone that would allow for a residential use. But that's what we're doing. The Planning Commission as well has recommended that the proposed zone change be approved. And I just want to mention that unless somebody else comes in a few months and asks for a zone change that might have some similar characteristics, by and large, in any of the area that we have north of I-15, any kind of close proximity to the airport, if somebody requested that that zoning be changed from industrial to, again, some zone that would allow for somebody to build a house, I think my recommendation would be no. So I think there are two main things in this case that, actually I'll say three, things that caused me to look at this differently, and I think staff and the Planning Commission sort of see it the same way. The subject property here, right now it's on the edge of Spanish Fork. It was annexed just a few years ago in anticipation of what then I think was kind of a long shot, but still the possibility of having a single fairly large industrial operator locate a facility in the general area near the subject property. But again, it's on the edge of the community. It's on the edge of an area that's zoned industrial next to thousands and thousands of acres that are zoned similarly to what the applicant's requesting the zoning be changed to tonight. So it's not in the heart of our industrial area today. It certainly could be in the future. But with the zoning that the applicants requested, practically speaking, I think they really only could construct one home. And not to look at a downside at all necessarily of the proposed zone change, but should in 30 years somebody come along and want to pay industrial land prices for the 12 acres that we're talking about today with the one house on it, then whoever owned the property at that time would have a decision to make as to whether or not they wanted to sell, with the prospect that the use would change. And that being said, I think if we were talking about a zone that would allow for more development, maybe 30 homes instead of one, that would make the likelihood that the use could be changed in the future really, really slim, then I think our recommendation to staff would be very, very different. The airport is a concern as well. We don't want to see residential development in any kind of close proximity to the airport for lots of reasons. I won't even get into those reasons. In this case, the subject property is not necessarily near the airport. We don't think that the airport's operations would adversely impact the subject property in any way. And therefore, the reciprocal of that would be true as well. So again, very low development potential with the proposed zone change. The fact that it's not in the heart of our industrial area or an area that's been developed industrially, and the distance that we have between the subject property and the airport, I think, are the things that make us comfortable recommending that the change be approved. The only thing that I would say really is a loose end is that as we looked in the Development Review Committee meeting at a need for future roads. We do anticipate that 1900 North will continue on to the west, and that additional improvements will need to be made to the road that abuts the property on its west side. And we would anticipate that the applicant, when they apply for a building permit, would dedicate land for those future road expansions, not expand or not actually construct anything at this point in time out in the middle sort of nowhere. We don't really want to see curb, gutter, and sidewalk that doesn't connect to anything. So we would not anticipate that any improvements would be made to any of the property's current or future frontage when we issue a building permit. But we have talked about the applicant. In fact, the DRC's recommendation is that the applicant simply do some type of fee in lieu, or maybe a lien in lieu. That is, the applicant simply commits to make the improvements when other improvements are there to connect to in the future. That's something that potentially, I mean, it comes certainly with a potential cost to the applicant, but that could be in a couple of years if we see a lot of development activity out there. I don't think that's real likely, so in all likelihood that's going to be well into the future, and we'll deal with that when that time comes. So it's a long way to say. Staff and the Planning Commission have recommended that the change be approved, but again, I want to be clear that this is not like our typical situation where we would recommend that somewhat precious industrial property be changed to residential zoning.
Great. All right, this is a public hearing. I would entertain a motion to go into a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, anyone that'd like to come up and talk about this proposed zone change, you're sure welcome to. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any questions, comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance Z03-18, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the Audison zone change.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. This will be a roll call vote. Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argyle.
Aye.
That passes. Okay, that was a lot faster than the last one. Okay, ordinance 04-18, making amendments to the comprehensive general plan by adding the annexation policy declaration as an element.
You adopted an annexation policy plan here a month or so ago, updated version of what we had adopted back about 15 years prior. What we're asking you tonight simply is to take that plan that you approved and incorporate it into the city's general plan. It's really that simple. I mentioned as well, we made one other change, which talked about the R5 zone. Also with the incorporation of this into the city's general plan, we'd recommend that the language be adjusted slightly in the city's land use element of the general plan to add the R5 zone as a zoning district that we have in the city. And that's it. The DRC and the Planning Commission have both recommended that this be approved.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I'd entertain a motion to go into a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scobes, a second by Councilmember Beck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in public hearing on this one. Anybody that would like to come and talk about this, you're sure welcome to. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember McKell and Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mendenhall. Excuse me. Hey, got the M.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
You got the mic, too. Yeah.
Okay.
Darn the luck. All right.
Didn't get the politician.
I did get that right.
I was just gonna say.
Sorry, I was talking to him today.
I mean,
All right, any comments, questions, editorials, corrections?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 418, making amendments to the comprehensive general plan by adding the annexation policy declaration as an element.
Second.
Got a motion by Council Member Mendenhall and Council Member Back. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
That is approved. All right, let's move on to new business. Acceptance of the municipal wastewater planning program annual report.
Thank you.
This is a report that we give the city council every year. It's required by the state, and we actually submit it to the state with your approval. Basically, the report says that our treatment plant and our collection system are in good order. We do have quite a bit of clay tile pipes still left in the blocks that we are working to replace. As we do this, it will decrease what's called I&I, or infiltration and inflow, which is basically groundwater and stormwater coming into our sewer system, which then goes through our plant. And when we reduce the I&I, it allows the flow component of the plant to accept more sewage, if you will. There's another component of the plant, which is the load, which is the contamination of the plant, of the sewage water, and that is not affected by stormwater and groundwater, but it does help with that aspect of our plant. One of the things that we have done in the last couple of years is we purchased a video inspection truck, which will video all the sewers in the city. I took most of a day and went out with our guys and did some video. It's kind of interesting. They give you an Xbox controller to drive this little camera truck down through the sewer lines, and you can record where there's problems with the pipe, or also where the laterals are going to the houses. And anyway, with that tool, we have kind of held off on doing a few sewer replacement projects so that we can just really verify where our biggest priorities are and where our money can get the most bang. So we've kind of built up a pretty large reservoir of cash to do replacement projects that we intend to start really spending next budget year, because we'll have really verified where our priorities are and where we should do some replacement. So I think we should see a lot of improvement to our sewer system over the next few years because of that. And then at the plant, the report found that we have enough money to do everything we need to the plant to meet current proposed regulations. Now, right now proposed is to bring phosphorus levels down to 1 milligrams per liter. If it stays at 1, then we'll be fine. If it goes down to 0.1, which has been the concern with all of the treatment plants in our area, then there probably would have to be some bonding and some large projects done up there. But for now, financially, we can handle all of the current regulations that have been proposed. So the plant's doing well, and the collection system's doing well, and we'll be doing even better in the next few months. But if you could make a motion of some sort to accept this report, then we'll send it on to the state.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to accept this.
I make a motion we accept the Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Annual Report.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Hall and a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, we have a couple here for letter G.
G?
Wondering if we could bump them up.
Let's do that. Let's go to G. Request for approval to construct a fence that is taller than 6 foot at 2065 East, 700 North. Why'd you tell me that earlier? We would have moved them right up to the front.
Oh, we just barely got to the new
He's
business.
wearing the wrong Spanish Fork hat.
No, he's not. That's the Giants, and it's a good man right there. Yeah, baby.
What's the difference?
Yeah, got it. I was a Spanish Fork Giant.
Okay, okay, just checking.
Go ahead.
The maximum height for fences in Spanish Fork is 6 feet, unless the city council approves an exception to that rule. You've seen a few requests for the fence height exception in recent years. We do require building permits for fences so that we can work with people to make sure that they get constructed legally. And we don't end up bringing requests like this before you. I understand that the applicants have corresponded with John Little, our building official, about the fence in question. He noticed it after it was built and that it was taller than 6 feet, and Mr. Little informed the applicants that they had two options to address the problem. One is to reduce its height to 6 feet, and the other is to approach the council to see if he would grant an exception to the height requirement. So that's the reason for the discussion tonight. We have a few pictures and I think even some text that we received from the applicants relative to the request.
Good. Any questions for the applicant?
Pretty fence.
Pretty fence.
It is, it's nice.
Any concerns?
Well, I've got a question for Dave.
Go ahead.
So I'm just curious. You know, I go by definitions. That way, everyone knows what, everyone knows what's expected of them, one way or the other. Now, a fence, a barrier, railing, typically of wood, wire, whatever, enclosing an area of ground to mark a boundary. By definition, would that lattice work mark the boundary, or is it decoration, not fence?
Tell you what, you're the council. You guys get to decide that. Oh. But I would say this, for example.
On us tonight.
I say that only because if people build trellises in their gardens, things like that. If this were standalone, freestanding, 6 inches inside the fence, would it be an issue? Would it need a building permit? Would it be, or could it just be there freestanding, just as tall as it is, for whatever grapevine or
Have to be set back.
or shade that it is?
Yeah, honestly,
It's not an accessory structure.
I think if somebody built it 6 feet off, or sorry, 6 inches even, off of the property line, particularly if you had something else on the property line, we probably would consider that to be maybe like some kind of an accessory structure. The maximum height for that within 5 feet of a property line would be 8 feet, I think is how we'd define it.
But aren't some of those allowable so long as it doesn't drain off onto the other property and it's within a certain size restriction?
Accessory buildings, exactly. Yeah, and that's why I say I think that's what we'd probably define that as, if, like you said, it's a lattice or something like that. I think we do have a few things like that around town, and it didn't mean to be flippant at all, but to answer your first question, let's say somebody had an 8-foot tall chain link fence, which is what we've seen kind of in the past, for different reasons, even taller than that. Certainly that probably would be like, in some ways at least, the lattice up above, in terms of, you can see through it and different things like that. It's not solid. And in a case like that, we would measure still from the top of that chain link. But so in my mind, honestly, it's not a matter of whether the fence is taller than 6 feet. It's a matter of how comfortable you guys are with it and what you want to do.
It was discovered by John Little.
That's my understanding, right?
No complaints from neighbors, right? As I understand it.
We got approval from the neighbor before we ever did it.
Okay, that's what I remember reading.
Yep. I like it. I think it
Do you need a
looks
motion or
nice.
anything?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the already constructed fence that is taller than 6 feet at 2065 East, 700 North.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Go San Francisco Giants.
Come on.
Can we come over and get some grapes or strawberries or what? Some.
Just bring us some down, we'll be fine. Thank you for waiting.
How about a root beer?
Yeah, there you go.
Some of you are a little bit older, my generation. I make the old-fashioned root beer with yeast.
Oh,
Not the dry
yeah,
ice.
baby, yeah, baby.
No alcohol.
Thank you. For,
No, just
all right, now we're back to B, right?
Oh, the grapes are going over the wine.
Ordinance 05-18, amending permanent sign regulation concerning banners.
At present, all that we regulate in terms of signage is how big it is. We don't regulate at all what signs need to be made of. And in short, we've had a couple of situations that have been discussed about with the Chamber of Commerce and our Downtown on Main group, going back for several months now. And trying to be a little bit tasteful about how I describe some of the situations that have brought this about. And in short, it's come about with the hope and really expectation that we can raise the bar relative to what people build signs out of. We've had signs that have been built, can you say built? That have been built out of a vinyl banner basically that gets affixed to a wall. And those tend to not weather real well. They tend to not be quite as attractive as signs that are built out of some other materials that are a little bit more rigid, a little bit more durable, and that sort of a thing. And what's before you tonight relative to not allowing banners to be permanent signs really has come about relative to those discussions that we've had with some of our downtown merchants. So that's the language that we see right here. So it's the addition of everything between permanent and opening over here. You could still use, however, a vinyl banner for like a grand opening, or if you wanted to advertise a sale during certain periods of time, which our ordinance allows and that sort of a thing. It's just relative to what's permitted as a permanent sign that we're proposing be changed.
What's the recourse? Business license? Valid or what?
Ooh, that'd be pretty harsh. That'd be our last probably resort.
Let's be harsh then.
Yeah. We'd probably start, frankly, with something more like a fine first.
A visit from Officer Friendly.
That's always how things start, yeah. Or a letter even maybe just a phone call.
Dave, I want to thank you and your department for coming up and doing all this, because I know our committees have been wanting it for a long time, me specifically. But I do have a question. The banners that are currently up, will they just be notified that they have so much time to take those down?
In some cases, yes.
Will any of them be grandfathered in?
I think some will. So for example, so this is my, Mr. Baker. Do you want to weigh in on this with us? The question is, so today we have people that have installed banners on the sides of buildings as signage. And this proposal would make that illegal. The question is about grandfathering. Let me give my opinion first. I think if we've issued a permit for that sign because it met our size requirements and that sort of a thing, in my opinion, that would be grandfathered. But we have people that have simply
I disagree, because I think that they're ugly. So I think
I might
that as a
disagree with
council,
that, but that's,
as a council, can't we say you have 3 months or 6 months to make a change because we're changing our ordinance or standard?
Yeah, so the legal answer is grandfathering pertains to zoning, not to signage. However, politically, it's very difficult if you've issued a permit, as Dave says, to tell somebody to take it down today. You can't amortize them out over a period of time, whether it's months or years. We do that with billboards by statute. Stacy's thought is really the way we should go to address this, rather than tell people, they got to be down tomorrow. Is tell them that our ordinance doesn't allow that. You've got a year, you've got 18 months, you've got 30 days, whatever council deems appropriate.
I think it's an important step to make our Main Street look great. I think there's some great possibilities. We're taking great steps to do so, but banners don't do that. That's my opinion.
Well, hey, look at the signage that's even going up right now. It's somewhat to protect the people that are making the investment right now. I mean, Stone Drug is going to be a nice sign.
It's going to be, yeah.
I'm excited, yeah. And there's been a lot of good work down there, and I think I'd like to see it all look nice. No banners, but. Iron Fist,
So,
right here.
Junior, do we talk time frames here? Is that for a different discussion? I don't know how to.
Are you going to continue, or are you going to adopt it tonight?
We are going to recommend that this be continued. That's a
Yeah,
great
we'll
point.
adopt
So
it.
if we're going to continue,
Well,
let's think about that, and when we adopt it, we definitely need to talk about that.
We want to adopt it tonight,
Yes.
but can we adopt it and
Well, there's some minor changes, some changes Dave made. The ordinance is drafted, it's not ready to go tonight.
Can I explain the curve? Then I'm going to throw it you right now. So, last Thursday, we got approached by a gal that wants to build a sign, happens to be downtown, that our ordinance doesn't allow. And that's where this language comes into play. I just put this together this afternoon. And my guess is you don't care as much about the language as they might about the next slide. So could we just go to that? This is what she wants to do, so you guys can figure out what space we're talking about here.
Cookie on top?
Yeah.
We like cookies, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have a horse.
Make it happen.
So
A horse? Yeah.
that's the curve that I'm throwing Junior
We're
and you
gonna
as
have
well.
to. We're gonna have to try the cookies first to know, like.
Incidentally, she doesn't even know we're having this discussion tonight.
So that's not okay, or that
Trying.
is.
Today, we don't allow signs that protrude above the roof line of a building like that.
She would have to build
Unless
a
it's
facade
channel
behind
letters, she would have to do that, a parapet of some kind.
We had to do that at Dos Portillos when we made. Pier
But she
4.
could
When we made it
turn
Pier
the
4.
sign and make a sign and then put, correct?
She could. And the concern that she has with that, honestly, I think is valid. She has two concerns. One is that she's got a great awning today that she doesn't want to destroy. But also, if you had, we call it a projecting sign, that is a sign that's perpendicular to the wall, like Lance Wilson has here, and like the shoe repair business has here. So if she did the same thing right here, she feels like it's going to be obscured from anybody's vision, and that's hard to argue with.
Well,
So for that reason, she's
Those protruding
proposed
signs
this.
aren't allowed anymore either.
We've made a tweak
I
here.
think we have made a
Yeah.
tweak.
Did we?
You might have
Yeah.
forgotten that one. It's maybe done a little bit
That was a
subtly.
long time ago, Junior.
At least a year ago.
It was that way for a long time,
I got
though.
right
It really
there for a
was.
reason.
So, anyway,
I remember.
the language that we've put together that would allow this last-minute addition, and that's why we had anticipated asking you to continue this so we can adjust the ordinance and bring it back to you ready to go. In all honesty, I don't think we're going to see a lot of applications for banners in the next, I don't know how long it's going to be before you have another meeting, but next.
So you want us to,
So- Unless you guys really, really want us to jump in, and then we will. You know, we'll do whatever. We could adjust the ordinance after the fact, I think. and-
We can wait.
We've waited this long. 3 more weeks won't
get
kill
the
us.
message out to the chamber that it's coming, and so
We're
don't.
not gonna have any from the active chamber members.
We got a few other items we
Back
need to talk
from them,
about. Let's tweak it.
Right.
Back up.
okay, so I need a motion to table.
We have a few
Actually,
items.
just put it on hold if we're going to follow the city
Let's
manager.
just put it on hold then.
Okay.
You guys go.
Motion to,
It's on hold.
Duke it out.
okay.
I got the next 3 items.
All right, ordinance 0618, modifying the requirements for removal of fierce or dangerous animals.
Those potbelly pigs that we approved.
Remember those pot-bellied pigs? We don't have any in the city anymore. But they were nice while they were here.
Fighting chickens? Fighting roosters?
No.
Yeah.
So for many, many years, we had a provision in our ordinance that said if you have a fierce or dangerous animal, generally related to biting dogs, but not necessarily limited to that, they had to be removed from the city. We also had a provision on dogs and separate provision on animals that were very duplicative of each other. Some couple of years ago, we combined those and eliminated the duplication, but in doing so, we lost the ability to remove a fierce or dangerous animal. Officer Warner, who's our animal control officer, now pointed that out to me the other day. He recommended that we put that back in. So we've done that. That's all this does is says if you have a fierce or dangerous animal, it has to be removed from the city limits. So if it's impounded, it can't come back in. If it's not impounded, it goes to court and there's a conviction, and the judge has to order its removal. So that's all this does is restore what we once had.
Junior, I know you're scared when I start talking, but I'm going to talk. Councilman Argyle and I were taking a helicopter ride over the city. And do you know that we had a bear within our city limits?
A wild one or a domestic one?
Wild.
Yeah, we've had
Wild
those,
bear.
We've had those regularly at the golf course over the years.
Down by Canyon Creek.
Really?
Are you serious?
On the development that Chris Childs is.
Hey, I had a mountain lion in my backyard.
Here we go.
Serious?
We've had those too, usually along the river.
Oh, you did.
Yes, I did.
Just like here's
Along
making
the
up
river.
words like Maltese balconies
We
tonight.
even had
Stop
the
making up
fishing
stories.
game come down and well, my neighbors saw it, so
We
that was
we
cool.
one year had an alligator that we found that we had removed.
Alligator?
An alligator in Spanish Fork?
Down in
Didn't you
where?
see a chicken or
Bayou.
two?
Third Ward.
No, it was in a pan. It was heated and it was very nice, expensive setup, but
Wow.
it's also an exotic animal which you can't have without a federal permit. 6 feet.
All right, any other questions?
Remove them.
We want the attorney to do about the bear.
Yeah.
Mike,
Make it illegal to go away bear hunting?
much like when I try to defend the rights of men, the last time Junior was up here, I'm trying to just make it clear.
I would
I'm gonna
like to
make a
make a
motion.
motion.
Yeah, okay, Stacy, you make a
Okay,
motion.
to
Thanks.
approve I'm on the wrong one, Mike. Go
Got it,
ahead.
C.
Yep,
Just go to C.
I'm there. Modifying, I'd like to make, is it the ordinance
Yes.
6-18, modifying the requirements of removal for fierce or dangerous animals.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Beck, second by Councilman Mendenhall. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argyle.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
That is approved. Okay, ordinance 07-18, repealing chapter 16th of Title 7.
So this was a section of our code that addressed the DRC. The DRC was also detailed and spelled out in Title 15. It is a function of Title 15 that is our land use ordinance. DRC deals with land use issues. So this is just repealing the duplication of the sections dealing with the DRC. We already have it, Brandon.
I like it.
The mayor always says the legislature should repeal some laws for every law they enact. We're doing that tonight.
Amen.
We're setting the example for those who should be looking to us for.
Like we always, Spanish Fork's always leading out.
Yep.
All right, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion. Oh, go ahead, Chad.
Motion to approve ordinance 7-18, repealing chapter 16 of Title 7.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Argyle, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argyle.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
That one passes. Ordinance 8-18, amending the city seal. This ought to be a hard one.
So we have a new logo. Hopefully our residents have noticed that. We have some really attractive signs about. A lot of the employees have shirts with that logo on it. In our code, we have the seal, and the seal has the old logo. So this is changing the logo to the current logo.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 08-18, amending the city seal.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by
Second.
Councilman Argyle. Roll call vote. Councilman Argyle.
Aye.
Councilman Member Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
That passes.
Did you hear that, Tyler? I'm on the seal team.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my word.
Okay.
You've been working a long time for
Zip
that.
it, Kier. I'm on SEAL Team 08-18.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, and
Resolution
military terms, like training
18-02,
duty.
amending the Spanish Fork City employee personnel policy, making various changes to remain compliant with law.
Mayor, Council, not a lot of big changes in this, just mainly cleaning up a few things. An example would be pre-employment testing. We had in our policy that we required drug testing as well as alcohol testing as well. We amended that because we are currently only testing for drugs, not the alcohol part, but we amended it to say may test for alcohol.
Root beer with yeast.
If you root beer with yeast.
Depends on how long you ferment that.
And then a couple of new policies we added. One was the drone policy, and then another one is for cybersecurity to help our employees understand what to do if there is a data breach. We try to make that one as simple as possible. So.
Great. I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 18-2, amending the Spanish Fork City employee personnel policy, making various changes to remain compliant with law, to clarify provisions and make it more efficient.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall and second by Councilman Scobes. This also is a roll call vote. Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
That passes. We've already done G. We will now go to board appointments. Dave?
Our ordinance calls for a program that has our planning commissioners serving a 3-year term with the prospect of being reappointed to one second term, so serving 2 terms in all. And, you know, we haven't had a lot of turnover on the planning commission, but we've had a little bit in recent years, had a little bit going back several years. And to make a long story short, we've kind of gotten out of the routine that our ordinance calls for, which is simply that every year in July, we present a new planning commissioner for appointment who is intended to take the place of a commissioner who has finished his second term on the commission. And at the same time, we reappoint a commissioner who has completed his first term so that he can serve, I say he, apologize, I mean he or she, right? So that they can serve a second term. Does that make sense? So one gets reappointed and one gets replaced every July. That's the idea. Now, as we've gotten out of kilter, which has happened when we've had new commissioners appointed to take the place of somebody that left before their term was complete, we haven't plugged them in to simply complete that term, which is really the only option that we have to stay on schedule. And in short, this is, I'm going to call it like a truing up of the program involving these dates here. You can see their actual start dates here, so that we get back on the schedule, which leads us, for example, to this particular June 30th, where Bruce Fallon, who is in the 3rd year of his second term, actually he served a little bit longer than that, that's part of the true up, he would step down from the commission and be replaced. And at the same time, we would have John Mendenhall, who actually just started with us a few months ago. He would be reappointed in effect to finish serving out Brad's time on the commission, if you will, by starting his second term, and so forth, just with the different dates. So this helps us from a number of different perspectives. One is that we're consistently bringing new ideas, new energy, and that sort of a thing to the commission. And at the same time, it helps us cultivate a little bit of experience, and therefore a little bit of expertise, and that sort of a thing. I didn't concoct this particular program, but I think it's great, and if we follow it, I think it works well. So again, just proposing that we take the existing commissioners and adjust their dates so it follows that program.
Right. Any questions, comments on that part? If not, I'd entertain a motion on those board appointments.
I'll make a motion to approve the board appointments for the Planning Commission.
Got a
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Beck, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Also, I would like to reappoint to the Parks and Rec Committee Susan Barber and Gary Briggs, and also appoint Laura Olson to the Park and Rec Committee to replace Blaine Jacks.
I move that we approve the mayor's appointments of Susan Barber and Gary Briggs, as well as Laura Olson.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Scobes, a second by Councilmember Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, discussion.
Oh, that's you.
Wrap me.
Yep. It's getting late.
What does that mean? And what was your name again?
It's 8.
Oh, easy. Easy.
I'm just saying, it is late. I'm probably going to slur a little speech here and all that stuff too, so.
Oh, I know.
Thanks, Tyler.
I'm geared up.
Okay, we're going to talk about, Seth and I are going to tag team here and talk about the RAP tax, care tax, park tax, whatever we end up. We should have decided a name before we started studying this, right? So we had one thing to go by, but a lot of the information we're going to share with you guys, we've talked about before. You've asked us to study this topic further, and so we've gathered some data, some information. We've also held a public focus group on February 26th and got some feedback and information from them as well. So
Here, turn it on. Oh, whoops, here you go. Oh, now it'll work. Try it now. I had the cursor down here. Still? Just gotta turn it on.
Really?
There you go.
I didn't do anything.
No, he didn't. It's plugged in. Try it again.
All right, I'll just talk while they mess with that. How's that? So anyway, we held a focus group on February 26th. We invited 35 people, 25 attended. And we had a really pretty good in-depth discussion about this concept and got a lot of feedback from the citizens. Mainly, though, because a lot of this is going to be repeat information for you guys, except for the feedback we got from the citizens. We want those people who may have endured and are still watching on TV to be able to get this information as well, so that we can continue to look at this possibility. So we'll go through this fairly quickly, but we want to be thorough and answer any questions. This is a discussion, so feel free to ask any. But this type of a tax is a sales tax. It's added to your regular tax. It's 1/10 of 1%. And again, the revenues that are generated from this are to go to specific causes. Parks, arts, recreation, culture. I mean, we identify that. The council will identify that as we move forward. But it's not a tax that can be used for anything, right? It's earmarked for certain areas in your community. As you know, it started in Salt Lake County, so as a ZAP tax because they have a zoo. And it's moved from there. A lot of the cities have adopted this tax, and I'll show you those in a little bit to help enhance their funding for various facilities and programs. Again, different names. A lot of cities are called by something different. There's a ZAP tax up there. Orm's known as the care tax. A lot of them have adopted the RAP tax. The newest ones are the park tax. So whatever acronym you want to use that helps move forward your desire for this type of a thing. Yeah, we added the PRCA tax. You thought you might like that one. It's the cowboy tax. It's an inside joke. But you guys got it, see? So you must.
It works.
It worked.
Totally works. PRCA.
I told him we needed to change one of those C's to cowboy if that was going to be the case. But it was interesting because we spent quite a bit of time, and I kind of felt like we might get hung up on this, and we did for a little while because there were varying opinions, all over the board. So some of them like the RAP tax because that's how the legislation had written it up, and that's how we should go by. And others like the park tax, and some like the RAP tax. So I'm glad you guys get to decide. The
little color to that. So just color, right?
Okay.
Every
You're right. We got to have.
gotta
There's
have
got to
a
be
color
some
animal.
color commentary. So please go ahead.
So as Dale said, somewhere there was a lot of interesting thoughts, and no matter what we call it, I think the discussion from the group really centered on make sure that it's you're consistent, right? And so if you're going to call it the care tax, then you always call it the care tax or whatever. And if you call it the park tax, make sure that if you intend to use cultural arts as a part of what the money is used for, used for, that you talk about that, and that you then again follow through with it, which of course you would if that's what you chose to do. So it was fascinating what, you hear people talk about what's in a name, and what that wasn't lost on the group that we had talking about it, as they really talked around that issue quite well.
I thought they were supposed to be side by side, right? Just continue to
Carry on. You don't want me to stay up there.
Carry on. Well, you tell me when you're ready to take over. So the option for the tax is we place this on the November ballot. There's some steps to take prior to this before it can be placed on the ballot. The legislation is written such that counties have first right to do this tax. And so we have to send a letter to them to say, do you have intents to put this on the ballot? Basically getting permission for us as a city to put that on the ballot. So we have to write a letter to them and receive one back before we can move forward in any fashion. The tax is voted on by the people. It has a sunset after 10 years. Has to be re-voted on again after 10 years. You can jump in here. You can see.
Oh, another.
Wow, I got all kinds of color with me, don't I?
Back on the election.
This is Bill Walton now.
Oh man, no,
That is true. He should be talking about the election for sure.
So on the election, if you remember with the Life Center, there's a pro-con issue, a voter pamphlet stuff. So there's a lot of voter information stuff that's going to go to the council, but it'll be put on the ballot, not in a primary election. It'll be put on the ballot in a general election. So it'll be in the November election. And this election is going to be run by the county. It's not a city municipal voting election, no council or a mayor position. So it'll be a ballot that will ask the county to add our question into their ballot that they'll put. But it'll be only one that'll be allowed to people who live inside the city. So even though the county has ballots that are in the county, this will just be voted on by those that live inside the city. So.
But you brought up the term of the pro and con. You still do have to have a pro and con.
Right. Argument for and against. It's all in the
public hearing.
The public
similar to
hearings.
that bond process.
They're not doing vote by mail, so it should be pretty easy for them to put it on the machines they're sending out anyway, right?
Thanks, Bill.
Back to you, George. Howard.
Appreciate that.
Brett Musburger.
Anyway, you will see here that there are a lot of cities that have taken advantage of this tax. On the left, that column is all counties who have implemented the tax. So all of those cities within those counties receive benefits from a portion of that tax. The ones that are starred, Salt Lake is in their third term. So they just started their third term. So they've been going for 20 years. The interesting part that you may want to know is their vote passed by over 70% the third time. So that's kind of telling to me. Orem just re-upped theirs, I think it was this last year. It may have been a couple years ago, but most of these who have had this tax and people understand it and recognize the benefit they're getting from it, their voter numbers have gone up every time they've re-upped.
Is there one that didn't pass on the second time?
No. Not that we're aware of.
There could be.
There are some out that didn't. I mean, Lehigh didn't pass theirs last year when they did it. For the first time. Yeah.
So if these cities have it, does that mean that when I go to Provo, American Fork, to any type of event or restaurant, I am paying their RAP tax, their park tax?
Yes. Any of those places where you shop, St. George, Park City, any of those places where you shop, yes, you're paying them. That's correct. We talked a lot about how to present this, and you know what their feelings were, and it was interesting. You know, most of them, it was fairly unanimous. Everybody said, "Hey, just keep it simple, straightforward, be honest, transparent." All those terms that you continue to hear, but they really liked. Let's just stick with it's easy. Everybody can relate with it. It's a penny on $10. So that was their feedback to us when we were talking about that particular item on how they wanted us to describe that. But they really emphasized the fact that they wanted us to be clear and upfront about what it is the tax is for and where it comes from.
That was also noted at the convention. They also said that penny on $10 makes it really simple and understandable.
Yeah, there was a lot of good discussion around this one, and some of it was, should we be more, focus on a high dollar item, a TV at Costco, so they get a sense of what that is, and somebody else suggested, could we focus on maybe what is it going to cost the average household if they shop this much throughout the year, and except for the one or two individuals that were making the suggestion as part of that conversation, the whole group across all their political thoughts and ideologies that they may have said, keep it really simple and straightforward. Just 1 cent on $10, a penny on $10. They can do their own math. They can, if they're going to go buy a $100 TV, then they can do their own math. And we felt like that was great feedback because we were really wanting to make sure we're not hiding anything, and we're not, but keeping it simple is really what I got out of that discussion with the folks.
And I appreciate Councilman Argyle's, he actually attended, I don't know, did either of you go? Okay.
It's out by each other, Dell.
That's good. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Way to go, Dell. Way to call them out.
No, you and I didn't in that one, because I wasn't in that one.
In the park one? The Rat Tax?
I wasn't
You were
in the
that
Rat
one
Tax.
together. Oh, you weren't?
No.
Oh.
Wow.
I'm just saying,
I was going to be
there. He
insulted
was like,
if I was
was
sitting
anyone
by you
else
and didn't
there?
remember. That would have been really bad, huh? It was a different one for us.
You've got a brick, Stacy.
Anyway. Okay, one of the things that they talked about that was really important to them was how this money gets distributed. And it was really important to this group, and they actually they loved the concept that this was going to be set up by a citizens committee that would actually receive grants, process the grants, and make recommendations to the council. Obviously, as the governing body here, you guys would ultimately determine what happens with that, right? But they liked how the citizens were involved in that process. And we keep referring to our notes because we got a whole bunch of notes here that we want to make sure.
Want you on camera.
We want to make sure we're covering the items that they felt were most important. And they wanted to know how the committee is going to be put together. And do you need to be qualified? And all these different really good questions that they had. And obviously, they will work under the same premise that our other committees are, and be an advisory committee that would be appointed by the mayor and approved by the council. So But those things all are still to be determined. You know, what it is, all of the bylaws that will govern this process will have to be set up by the council. Any questions on that? You know, there's all, and as you review a lot of the different cities and what they all do them a little bit differently. But some of them will dedicate a certain percentage of money to each of these areas. Some of them just leave it open. You know, do we include 501c3 organizations? All those things will have to be determined before we start that process. Any questions on that? Okay, we're rolling. So here's some of the things that we asked them with their responses. You know, they love that it was that the Citizens Committee would be involved as an advisory committee, so they've got additional people that are looking at those applications, and it's not just the city making that determination. They didn't want me to have control of all that money. Is what they told me.
Smart group.
So yeah, they were very intelligent. And so part of that process is, though, all of the divisions in my department would make application just like anybody else, right? So, very good process. What other thoughts do you have regarding how these funds could or should be handled? Again, I shared some of that with you. They were pretty concerned that it wasn't just the city controlling this money and that it could be sucked back into the general fund somewhere. Those are some of the thoughts.
One, I think they asked a question, could we take a loan on this? And the answer to that is yes. You can take a loan on any revenue source, I guess, if you want to. The tax, though, because it sunsets after 10 years, the most you'd be able to bond for is maybe somewhere around $5 million over a 10-year period, which really doesn't make a lot of financial sense to go through the bonding process and all the costs associated with that. So the answer to that is, yeah, and we explained this to the group, yeah, you could bond for it, but it really wouldn't make good sense. One guy described it this way, that I guess only an idiot would use this as a bond for it. And at the $4 to $5 million bond amount, although that sounds like a lot of money, and it is, for all the fees associated with going through the process, it's not something that we would even recommend you consider. We just use it year to year and plan for projects and things like that. That was one of the big questions we talked about. I think others you mentioned.
The other thing and these are good questions. I mean, they wanted to know if we were coming in the back door trying to get a life center. Yeah. Was their intent, and they're good questions.
Great questions.
Can this be used to help fund a life center? The answer to that is obviously yes, it can if you choose to, but it doesn't make sense to bond for that kind of money. But the other good question they ask is, can this money roll over? And the answer to that is yes. I mean, the council will determine that, but it makes sense that you would, if you want to save up for a project, you could collect this money for a period of time and be able to use it for a bigger project.
Back on the could you use this for a rec center, and again, we talked a little bit about it with this group. When we were going through the life center discussions, I remember one question a gentleman asked at one of our public meetings we had at Larson Elementary, and they asked, is there a different funding source or some funding source in addition to property tax that you could get to help pay for this? And this tax is absolutely one of those, but it's only a 10-year window. And so you really can't use it as a pledge for the general obligation bond because it wouldn't last the duration of that bond. And in 2015, our revenues from this probably would have been in the $300,000 range. And we'll show you here in a few moments what estimates are, as we've talked about with you already. But what estimates are in 2017 and 2018 with some of the growth in our commercial retail. And in time, this 1/10 of 1% will be an annual amount that could be used for that if you wanted to. But it only has a 10-year window. you can't use it as a guarantee for any kind of a rec center bond. It just, no bonding agency would use that as a guaranteed source.
So again, you guys know this, but these are just some examples of some of the facilities that have been built with this type of a tax. These are in Orem. That's a new pool that's in their rec center. This is a park that's in Orem. Big water features. That whole park was constructed with care tax money, as they call it. And this is an All Abilities playground that's in Orem. They also use some of this money to help fund that project, which I know you're familiar with. Thunder Junction down in St. George, that All Abilities park.
That's Seth, right? There's in case you wonder.
That's Seth in the shadow, with his fingers up like this.
In the shadow, no.
Okay.
It's a selfie.
So I would encourage you, if you get a chance, these are some web links that you can go look at from American Fork, Orem, and Salt Lake County. They're very informative. They'll tell you how they distribute their money, if they put caps on certain amount or certain things. These are just some screenshots of their page. You notice that Orem uses major, mid, and mini grants, so they've got it actually laid out so that they can only have a specified dollar amount for those. There's a myriad of ideas out there that you can draw from on these web pages. This is the park tax in American Fork. You can see there's some of their recipients. Again, you can see how American Fork Recreation's applied for grants on several facilities, including this Art Dye Park. The arts really seem to flourish with this tax. And you'll see if you go look on the webpage in Salt Lake County, they're giving millions and millions of dollars to keep some of those orchestras and theaters and things alive. And it's really the bloodline. It's really what's feeding those and keeping them afloat. But they do really well. But if you could see this, American Fork just started their tax in 2016, and immediately in 2017 they were putting $408,000 towards that. So they didn't collect that much tax in that short period of time, but they've carried that over. But if you'll look at those web pages, it'll show you how they distribute them as well. And this is Salt Lake County, of course, the ones who initiated this type of a tax, but theirs are in tiers. And you're talking millions and millions of dollars here that are distributed to a lot of these organizations. But they split them up into different tiers. So I encourage you to look at that and get some feedback on it. One of the questions we got asked frequently is what types of things will we use this for? And of course, this is a really big list that I've accumulated over the last while from just listening to various people that have said, hey, why don't we have one of these in our city? And with my staff and the coaches and people that we interact with all the time. And these are some of the ideas they've thrown out. So this is kind of a comprehensive list of a lot of those things. One of the things that they talked about, and we obviously plan to we want to do if we move forward with this, is to pinpoint on a handful of things that the citizens are really interested in, because this is obviously an overwhelming list. But there was a huge interest in. You can see right here, huge interest in the All Abilities Park. They love our trail system. Can the money go to be used to help with trails? And so the discussion really was with them about let's refine this list, come up with some hot buttons that people love, and utilize that. And you'll see that later in some of the sample ballots that we have. So there's the estimated tax that we would receive from that currently. In FY17, it was $491,000. In FY18, $586,000, and that would be money that you would. Or sorry, thank you, $568,000. So that's That's money that you'd receive annually. And one of the questions that they asked was, because there are certain things that are not taxed. Food is not taxed, certain kinds of food. I don't remember what their definitive definition was. Do you remember what it is, Bill?
If it's a piece of food is heated up and served with a spoon, it's taxed. If it's raw groceries, it's not taxed.
What if it's a cold sandwich that they hand to me?
Well, your hands are
I didn't
like
use a spoon.
fork, so that's just,
He never used
you eat it. If it's prepared. If it's prepared food, then
There you
it's
go.
taxed.
Okay.
Which is, can be in the grocery store as well.
Right, at the snack bar or at the deli, stuff like that. But if it's a broom, it's taxed, or this tax would be taxed on it. If it's a package of flour, that's not. If it's a box of cereal, it's not. So it's only, so when you look how much tax revenue we have, we don't get 1/10 of 1% on all of the tax dollars. It's only on the stuff that's not.
What about Cheetos?
Eat it with a fork.
So,
You heat them up.
All right. Seth, put on your propeller and go. There's some really, lots of numbers here.
This is where I get to be John Bocut, geek out a little bit. I think most of you have probably seen this in some of our reports that we've given to you, but there's a lot of information on this this slide. So I'm gonna kind of zoom in. This comes from a company. Actually, we got this report from EDC Utah, which you'll recall a couple of council meetings ago they came and presented on some of the add-ons to the membership that we get now that we have joined EDC Utah. One of which is a sales tax report from the Buxton Group. And these sales tax reports are fairly expensive when you do them on your own, so it's quite a nice add-on. What this report tells you, we're going to look at this line graph, and then we'll zoom in on the numbers below. What this report tells you is where people are shopping and how they're shopping in Spanish Fork. And if the line here at 1 basically says that you're not necessarily bringing residents in, and your residents aren't necessarily leaving to shop for that particular class of item. So basically, we have what we need here, and our residents are meeting that need here. They aren't having to leave, and we're not really attracting people from other cities to shop here. And you'll notice as you look at these bar graphs that we're actually not anywhere near 1 really in any category. So if we're below 1, that means we're exporting. You and I are shopping in another city for that particular classification of item. If we're above 1, we're importing. And so for these 4 categories, health and personal care stores, general merchandise stores, food service and drinking places, and I guess the total is heavily weighted because of these 2 large items. Overall, we're an importing city, which it means that we're becoming a regional shopping hub. And I don't think anybody, certainly in this room, would question that, right? We know with the growth in the retail business that has occurred, we are importing people to shop here and not just our own residents, which is a good thing. It means that people from Springville or Mapleton or Salem, Payson, et cetera, are coming here. And as it relates to this type of a wrap care or park tax, that means that residents of Spanish Fork would be paying, say, 70 cents or 60 cents on the dollar that the tax would be bringing in. And residents from other communities would be making up that difference, if that makes sense. So let's look at some of those specific numbers, which I think is really interesting to do. Again, remember, below 1, and the chart kind of indicates at about 0.8 to 1.2. If you're in kind of that area between 0.8 and 1.2, you'd call it maybe close to an equilibrium. But outside of that, below 0.8 and above 1.2, you're kind of out of it. What stores make up general merchandise stores? Walmart, Costco, right? Those are large stores here. And interestingly, our food service and drinking places, if you look, they're beginning to trend outside of, we're bringing them in and not just our own residents. So we export a lot of shoppers for things like vehicles, home furnishings, electronics, clothing, sporting goods, building materials. As you shop, you know that we don't have many of those kinds of offerings here. We might have a store or two, and we're growing in the offerings of those stores. I should note, this report is before the latest stores opened right around the Christmas shopping time. So we can run this report again, say in 6 months, and I'm actually really excited that we got this before, so we can see we can begin to track the trend of change with the stores that opened up at Christmas time. So you have a lot of clothing stores like Famous Footwear and, well, I guess not a ton, but Famous Footwear, even the beauty products, Ulta, and some home goods like Down East and TJ Maxx. We import a lot of shoppers for health and personal care, pharmacy and drug. We have very robust pharmacies here, and so Stone Drug, then Macy's, Walmart, those do very well as far as pharmacies and importing shoppers. We already discussed the warehouses and superstores, food services, and then there was one kind of anomaly when you dig into the reports. It's about a 20 or 30 page report that Joann's is a major importer of shopping. That in the category that is the Joann's, it has a bunch of different subcategories, and they're maybe down below the one, but then Joann's itself is far above the one, which was pretty interesting. It doesn't identify Joann's, right, as a company, but what they fabric and things like that, and it's a major importer, which is great. It means that people are coming to town to shop at that location. So we asked this group, the focus group, and we'll ask you, I don't want you to fall asleep, so I'm going to engage you for a moment. What stores do you shop at? Where do you most often go when you leave? What towns do you shop at? If you don't shop in Spanish Fork, what towns do you shop in? Orem. Provo. Where else? Did anybody, when you leave town? You don't ever? So did you go down to did anybody go down to the Sunshine Tournament this year? If you went down to the Sunshine Tournament a couple of weeks ago, or if you're going to go down there for spring break, I always go down there, it seems, for spring break with a conference. And when I'm down there, we inevitably go to the Old Navy that's there. We'll hit some of the other stores, the outlets, and it might as well be a neighborhood party. I'll see 4, 5, 6 families from my neighborhood in the Old Navy. And so it's a lot of people, of course, go down to St. George. Back to school shopping, do you ever go to Park City, to the outlets in Park City? The reason I bring up Park City and St. George, you mentioned Provo and Orem. Each of those communities have a park, or RAP, park, care, however they call it. They have this tax. And so as you're going to those communities, you're paying this tax for their community. And that was something that, as we discussed with the focus group, was really an important aspect to this. It was an important discussion point. In fact, they said we should have gotten to this sooner in some of the discussions, because it was to make that connection of, well, I don't want to be just only participating in paying for Orem's whatever. And if an Orem person comes down here, Dave, anecdotally, you've talked to a number of people from Provo who prefer to shop here because it's easier to get, at least from central or southern Provo to Spanish Fork than it is University Mall or American Fork or any of those places. So, not that our stores can replace University Mall per se, but as our retail grows, yeah. All right, we'll breeze through these last few. We talked about how impact fees and general fund fund the park construction. We did discuss this, and we've already talked about specifically, could this fund a rec center? We've already answered that. What is, with all the new sales tax that is in town or coming, what's it being used for? And what will this replace? And as we talked, the ability for us as we grow, we have a lot of things that are coming. We know that a fire station will be built sometime in the next couple of years, as we've discussed and purchased ground. We know that with that will come changes to our fire and ambulance service. Those changes won't come without adding costs to the budget. As we look to add those costs, if we have this RAP tax, it'll allow us to take money out of the general fund revenues today and use the RAP tax, care tax, whatever we call it, use those funds for recreation, parks, cultural arts endeavors, and we can then use those monies that were before in the general fund for public safety items. That was, as we discussed that, they had a lot of questions about that, and we helped them to understand that the future growth issues that we have related to public safety can be offset by diverting general fund monies today that's going for this by using this RAP tax. And again, having non-residents help pay some of that makes it so my dollar goes further here in town. All right. Dale, you want to wrap it up? You want?
Yeah. During the closure. Bring in the closer.
We probably talked about a lot of these already. Yeah, we have.
Well, yeah, and one thing I want to add to what Seth was saying, because they were and they were really intelligent questions. Again, it's why do we need to do this now? We've got all this great money coming in. Don't you have impact fees to pay for parks? Really good questions, right? And I think Seth addressed that very well, because there's other growth needs in the city that have to be addressed. And so, yes, if we have some funding source that can help with some of the things we're funding now with general fund then it can be diverted to somewhere else.
And impact fees can't pay for everything.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. So there's real strict rules on impact fees and what they can be used for. They can't help to fund an orchestra or a play at the school, and so they're very specific. So they both have very different roles. We've talked about the Citizens Committee, so we won't cover that again. We've talked about the money that can be rolled over. So we need some direction from you guys on where we go from here. The most important thing is that if you're interested in pursuing this, oh, is there? Okay. So we already have them on there, huh? Why the tax now? We talked about those two. Again, you can get on the websites and look at some of their some of the ballot language that's on here. I like Orem's. It lists some specific things that they may receive for that. It's clean, simple, easy to understand, but also lists some ideas on things. We don't want to put this will fund, but ideas because we don't want to get backed in a corner on certain things, but here's some ideas of some things that this money could fund. Very different. If you look at Lehigh's language on theirs, very different. It's almost like they took theirs right out of the book and talked about zoos and botanicals and they have some of that stuff there. But anyway, those are some other things that you can look at. Okay, do you guys have any questions? First of all, again, you've heard this. We hope we brought some new information that came from the public, because they're the ones we really want to get feedback from. But before we can do anything and put it on the ballot, we need to be able to send that letter to the county asking them if they're planning on putting a RAP tax or a tax on the ballot in November.
When it passes in November, when does the tax start?
January.
It would start.
Right? Oh, that's true. It's got to be 90 days.
So it'd be.
That's not quite there.
So we.
And so it'll take a year to accumulate some funds.
We'd collect a little bit in the FY 19, I guess, and then 20 it would be a full year.
So with the Life Center, one of the complaints, I guess, better said, one of the complaints was that there was no there was limited public input. And so one of the questions would be, are there other areas for people to give public input, to give ideas, questions, or was it the focus group that was held? Would it be just contacting their council and saying, here's my 2 cents, or my 1 cent on every 10, I guess?
A nice one. Good question. Once if you give us the direction to move forward with this, we'll certainly unveil other opportunities for public to give input. We will have a public hearing, but I'm even proposing that we go, further than that, and we have some opportunities in open houses or whatever we want to do as a way to get information to people so they can be educated. We'll certainly take this out to the public as much as we can, so that we can get their feedback as well.
And with as much discussion that we had about the committee, it'd be good for us as if we want to keep studying this and presenting it to the public, that we come up with some basics about it, but then ask, as a part of the discussions, what else do you want to see the role of this committee be? And get some of that feedback, and then you can incorporate that into the guiding principles and bylaws, if you will, of that committee that we have.
At this committee meeting, it was good for me because I hadn't seen a lot of the folks that we had seen since the Life Center discussion 2 years prior. And one unique conversation that I had was in regards to transparency. And we were very transparent with the Life Center, to the tune that we said that our rec center portion of the Life Center would be $25 million. A neighboring city bonded for $12 million. And theirs is getting near the $25 million. And so it was fun to have that conversation with this individual and say, yeah, you were transparent. And the process was that the people voted. Right. They were able to vote. The biggest concern that I have is that the county's not doing vote by mail this year.
Yeah.
It's frustrating because last year it increased our voter turnout. And for good, like people being involved. And the thing that's frustrating is that they've made the decision, and that's their decision that they've made. However, we will have one location to vote. Maybe two in Spanish Fort.
Yeah, they're talking about 2.
Fantastically terrible. Right? Come on.
I think you peel off that way. I'm going to peel off this way and let Kent come up and talk about this.
We're done. We have no control.
Talking election.
And we don't have any control over it. I'm just telling you that if this is the year, and we're going to have terrible turnout, and the Life Center was wonderful because it got a good portion of the community involved, and they voted, and they, whatever side you were on,
there'll need to be
a
campaign of, to get out and vote for an important issue. The county will have early voting, so it'll be the 9 days before. They still have absentee voting, so you can ask for a ballot to be mailed to you, but they won't just mail it to you. And then they'll have the voting places. They're anticipating using the Senior Center and the Ponderosa down at the fairgrounds. It's the 2 places that everybody in town will come and vote. They say they're going to have 20 voting machines, and the check-in is going to be streamlined with tablets, iPads, and you can vote anywhere. So they're saying that if you worked in Provo, you could go to Provo with your ID and you could vote a Spanish Fork ballot in Provo where you work. So their intent is to not make it bad, but it would be better if they would stick with the same thing. So
No,
I agree.
Well, now, and part of that, I may be mistaken, I've read several different articles on this. One of them may have been from dailyherald.com, but that actually talked about part of a way, I guess, that we could advertise with this is to encourage people to absentee ballot. That was one article I read that talked about even the county is looking at it as a way to clean up addresses and missing ballots and stuff. I don't know if that's an approach we want to take.
They should have already got that through the last 2 times.
Right. Well, and that's kind of my why I don't quite understand why they made the decision they did. But that might be a way to encourage people to vote, is to do it absentee with regard to this. That may, I don't know, may help, since we only have 2 locations they can physically go to.
Oh, vote early too. And so, do you have any other questions about the ballot
No.
part? There'll be
Can't control it.
there'll be a public hearing, the voter information the pamphlet stuff that's going to go out. It'll probably go with the rest of the thing, but it is just a city issue, so it is just the city voters will have this question.
I think we probably ought to move on and see what the county's going to do. So we need to send a letter, and because if they're doing something, then this is all a moot point. But if they're not, that's the first step. I say we go ahead and send the letter, and then see what happens there when we get the reply back.
Informally, in discussions, we don't think that they're going to, but obviously we have that formal process that we must send a letter. So we can write that letter and solicit the feedback from the county, which will tell us whether or not we can actually put it on our ballot or not.
So it's mentioned in that, oh, go ahead, Stacy.
No, that sounds good.
Mentioned in that, what do we call it, the focus group, about how much the tax might come from outside people versus inside people. And I know this, have you found out
No,
some
keep
of those
going.
numbers?
Keep going.
Well, so in the emails I've been trading with American Fork, our counterparts there, about their experience, and I won't go over all the, I'll keep it short, Mayor. But here's the interesting part, Mayor, and this completely shocks me, and I know we're not American Fork, we're the better fork.
That's right.
How much of the sales tax collected in AF is from AF residents? I went to a few of our biggest sales tax collectors and asked if they had data to help us know the percentage of sales tax collected from households in American Fork City boundaries. They came back and it showed that just over 92% came from people outside AF. This is one of the biggest benefits. Our park program is funded at about 90% from non-AF residents. Now,
Would
I
have
know
never guessed that percentage.
I would have never thought that at all. I mean, I was hoping that there was a 50-50 number or something like that, but you could look at a comparable AF, and they're on a growth place in their retail shopping district of where we're going to be in a relatively short amount of time. I think it's prudent that you start looking at this sort of a vehicle before you're to where they're at and start gaining the years of that tax. I mean, 92%, that's a whole lot of people coming in AF. And I know they're, closer to the other cities and everything like that, but holy cow, just start looking at the people that are coming from Price and Nephi and everywhere else around South Utah County to come shop Spanish Fork.
So one of our to-dos, and we didn't report on it here because we've been so far unsuccessful in getting it, but one of the to-dos is try to get at that kind of information. We've had some informal conversations with some of the businesses, and they're understandably hesitant to give that out because, for some it's a competitive, maybe proprietary, and so they've been hesitant. We're hopeful that we can get some of that, if not scientific from them, at least fairly high level, that we could put a better number than, I'm guessing 70% is Spanish Fork and 30% is import, but I mean at 92%,
low.
yeah, I might be missing it, and we'd really like to be able to speak to that. So we'll keep working on that. I don't know if we'll get it, but I'd like to get it for at least a handful of our larger stores that we know import buyers.
Is everybody, you just need direction then?
Got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Got it. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We can go back to Junior and Dave.
Oh, we're done. Aren't
I
we
move we
done?
go into closed session.
No. We can go back to Junior and Dave on a sign.
What's in
We're ready to go.
They figured it out?
So you guys an email with the text updated just of the ordinance.
Can you pull it up?
Sent it to
Matthew 7:7.
No, I think it was something else he was trying to get for us too.
Junior reviewed that. I think that would do two things. It would outlaw banners as permanent signs, and it would allow the cookie to be used as signage.
It would allow it?
Allow or outlaw?
Would allow.
Outlaw banners, allow cookie.
Okay. So we can vote on that, and we don't have to.
Because the cookie's like the horse over Reams.
That's exactly, I used that as an example earlier in the week.
I mean,
Icon.
Except he thought it was a cow, till I helped him understand it's a horse.
I was
He's
speaking
not from
quick-
here. He's not
I
from
was
here.
speaking quickly. I said it's a horse or a cow or something up there. I said
Okay.
something. Horse or cow.
No, because they don't.
All right, let's go before we get too far here. So, do you guys want to go ahead and address this now? All right. I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 518, amending permanent sign regulations concerning banners.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Scobes. This has got to be a roll call vote, right?
Yep.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Thank you.
There you go.
Wow. Stacy gets what she wants again.
I get
Okay,
what
go
I
ahead.
want.
I move we go into closed session for reasonably intimate land transaction and reasonably intimate.
So before we go into closed session, sorry, Mayor.
You just made a
No
motion.
council meeting next week, right? No need for that?
Right, because we'll be gone.
Spring break.
We got it all done today. We've got another 2 hours, so we'll get it all done today.
Mhm.
And then we won't meet next week. Our next council meeting will be when? 17th. April 17th.
17th.
Going to St.
We already knew that.
Okay.
All right, I got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by
Second.
Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Tighter apparel.